Anywhere you like.
Oh, those chairs are mine.
Call to order the Borough of River Edge Mayor and Council Citizen Budget Committee meeting Saturday, February 29th, 8 a.m. in the morning. Please stand for a moment of silent reflection. Mr. Poirier, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Councilwoman Bastide.
Here.
Councilman Canigo.
Here.
Councilman Gaudier.
Here.
Councilwoman Kaufman.
Here.
Councilwoman Kinsella.
Here.
Councilwoman Montesano Cohen.
Here.
Budget Committee members. Anthony Barbera. Barbary, I'm sorry, Anthony. Do that. Claudia Calderon. Constantine.
That's it.
Good. Teresa Esposito. Kenneth Krautheim. Al Roman. All right. We show everyone is present.
I'm sorry to be starting those that don't know me. My name is Ray Poirier. I'm the Borough Administrator. This is Chris Lacagle. He's our CFO. Together we make you round. We have a book that we presented to all of you. I kind of want to just take a moment and go through the book so you all understand actually what's in the book. The book is divided up into two sections. The first being capital, the second being operating. Everything that you're going to see on the slides that I present to you is in that book. Everything that is presented on the slides in the book, there's backup for, and that's why the book is so big. Each book, each division, I refer to them as divisions because when on your chart of accounts, it's usually a number that's this big. Division is usually your middle number, so you'll hear me refer to 100, 200, 300, and that's called your division. In the division, there is an overview of the division, and then the next page preceding is what I call a roll-up, a detail of that division. So it basically starts out with we created a spreadsheet that ties into everything associated with that department, into a master, into the overall budget, and into the final product. And when I say final product, it means the product that I'm presenting to you today. It doesn't necessarily mean the final product of where we end up. I want to stress to everyone that this is your budget. Chris and I are here to help facilitate you guys, to get you to whatever tax rate that you feel comfortable with, to get you to whatever items that you want to go ahead and fund. You can take items out of the budget, we can add items into the budget, you can use more surplus, you can pretty much do anything that you want to do. When we put together a recommendation for you workers based upon certain feedbacks that we received, and we go from there. Questions? I think I want to start with operating first, which is about halfway through your book. You go to in the middle of your book, you should have a green page. That's your chart of accounts.
And that would be right after the table of contents?
Yeah.
And then you can maybe see when you flip the table, you flip half the green page and you'll see the PowerPoint presentation. So, I like to move around a lot. It's my timing in nature, and with my hands a lot, so I apologize in advance for that. At any time, if you have questions, if you want to stop, I can answer the event at that point in time, or we can go ahead and deal with it at the end, whatever makes you guys happy. The budget process. So the first two items necessarily aren't part of the budget process, but I wanted to put those in there because I think every year it's important to take a look at your open encumbrances. And we went through, dating back to 2012 to current, of all open encumbrances, and we were able to liquidate approximately $160,000 of open encumbrances. That'll ultimately help your surplus balance. The second topic, again, that's not necessarily tied into the budget specifically, but for those of you who don't know, in the past, the majority of books were kept on the infamous green ledger books. They were all handwritten. One of the things that we've done over the past year is convert everything over to Edmunds. And then moving forward, the budget report or the budget documents that you have in front of you, many of those will ultimately end up being generated through Edmunds. So we got kind of rid of the adding machine, the having the book, and we have the ability to make real-time decisions rather than having to wait for someone to do calculations. So, yes, sir.
Can you just define Edmunds?
Edmunds is a software company. Yes, sir. And what I have as my last item on the bottom, I really want to thank all of the staff here and council. It's been, to lose a BA is one thing, to lose a CFO is another thing. Because usually Chris and I, if I leave tomorrow, Chris and I worked on this extensively together, and vice versa. To lose, 40 years of institutional knowledge is certainly challenging, to say the least. So not only has Chris been stellar, but all of the ladies down in the office, in the finance department, have been fantastic. And the department heads, I have to tell you, also have been great. I spent more time with the department heads going through their each individual budgets than I think probably has ever been done before in the past. Some more than others. Some, as of yesterday, were calling me up asking me to make a change or two to tweak things. And quite frankly, there's one that I went down to the voicemail on my phone from him. But what I can tell you is that overall, you have very caring department heads that really want to make sure that the end product is what they feel is best for their department. So one of the other things that Chris and I have done is we had some difficulties in understanding where you were at with certain salary and wages. We've gone back through and re-engineered all of those items. We have spreadsheets on all of that information. And now we can kind of tie back into those numbers based upon how we develop them, rather than using somebody else's work process. So, starting about 4 or 5 months ago, I started sitting down with department heads and talking about their budget. There are different budgeting philosophies. Some municipalities will take last year's appropriation. If you got $1,000, the department head comes in and they ask for an additional $200. Then you argue and have a debate about the $200. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I'm more of a zero-based budgeting guy. While in a municipality that is sometimes not necessarily a good thing, I kind of do a hybrid of that. And what that really is I go through each individual line with the department head, and you'll see in the budget, you'll see in your backup documentation that there'll be a line for contractual services. Well, I don't think it's ever been delineated before the council of what makes up contractual services. What are all the dollar amounts that get you to the end total? And we've done that with just about every line item in the budget. So that way, when we start talking about items perhaps or dollars that are cut, it really doesn't come down to a line. It really doesn't come down to a line in most cases. It comes down to an item that you want to fund at a lower level. or not at all. One of the other things that was going on is at the end of the year, there were several salaries that really weren't budgeted the way that they should have been. Public Works being one of them. They were transferring from all of the other salary wage accounts back into 290 and then cutting payroll out of that. We've gone ahead and readjusted all of those accounts to appropriately reflect where the individuals work. And we've had that in one or two accounts. Also, I talked about delineation, what makes up each individual line. As you go through that budget, you'll see how we got to and how we derived our numbers on every individual line. I talked about briefly, lines were adjusted on the current need and adjusted where possible to offset additional needs. So I go back to my $1,000 example. If it was $1,000 and they were asking for $200, but they needed, but another line, they only spent $800-900. We went ahead and tried to adjust those lines down to offset that $200 increase where possible. Again, my personal thanks to all the staff who really have been fantastic in this process. And quite frankly, you wouldn't have this book without everybody being involved throughout. Where we are today. So something really good happened to us, and it's also a challenge for us moving forward. What's if I turn it on? So our net valuation went up by $15 million. That's a great thing. The downside, and that helps lower your taxes. The more your town is worth and the more the valuation comes in at a higher rate, it actually lowers the rate of which taxes increase. If you go ahead and you take a look at the past 3 years, there's $7 million, $3 million, and $2 million. So in this year, we increased what you've done in the past 3 years. A big portion of that is because of Newbury's Landing that came onto the books, the new development. Right now, to the best of my knowledge, we really don't have any other new big developments on the books. And that's always the debate with council, to try to balance new development versus the impact of schools. And that, we could spend a whole other day on just that conversation, because on one hand, the new development and additional housing is an advantage to the borough because of additional taxes. The flip side is the impact that it has on the school district. So right now, there's not any new major developments that are in the pipeline. So my thought process is you're going to be back around this $2-3 million increase on your net evaluation. Also, the tax assessor has told me that the county has ordered a revaluation for next year. So we are evaluating that.
That's for 2020 or 2021?
2021.
Okay.
So we're evaluating that. I'll have more information on that as we go forward. But that may change some of the dynamics going into next year. Yes, sir.
Tax evaluation is the town-wide tax evaluation?
That's what I understand it to be, because we exceeded our 10 years, or around 10 years. So it's ordered by the county. We do have the ability to challenge it or ask them to push it off for another year, but that'll be a conversation for council down the road. Yes, sir.
Excuse the interruption. Just a side thought. Seems like our town, there are a number of them called McMansions going up. Can that be possibly a consideration to have a stabilization of the valuation because they're going up and raising the taxes? But many homes are going down. I don't know if it affects, they're going to have foundation, they build these huge homes, which I would assume affects the tax rate. Can that maybe project that we'll have a leveling off rather than a drop down of the valuation of properties?
I don't want to give you the wrong information. I'm not a tax assessor, so I don't want to speculate on that. What I will tell you is, if you go back to the averages of what you've been doing, the $3 million and $2 million, do I think we're going to come in at another year with $15 million increase? I would say not. Do I think our increases are going to look more like we were here? Probably. I don't think those knocking down the Cape Cod and building the McMansion is gonna get you, increase your net valuation by that much.
So do you think most of the 3 million is the McMansions?
I think the net valuation is, whether it's the McMansions or other development that goes on, every year that's calculated by the tax assessor, and he comes up with that formula. So yeah, unless you had other businesses associated with, in that current year, or additions that are, when they go ahead and do additions or improvements or, the valuation or the value of that house goes up, and then that's factored into that. Where we, our increase of where we're at today, we're $356,803.52 is what the tax increase is for this year as we stand today, which equates to 99.52 on the average taxes per year. That's a decrease. If you look at last year, we went up $140. 147, and so we're down by $50. We reduced the rate of the tax increase by $50. So that's actually a pretty good thing. I will also tell you that I look at these numbers from a conservative approach. There are two schools of thought with this. Some people take a look at this and say, okay, if I didn't do anything to my house, my value really didn't go up, so we should go ahead and until the valuation changes through an assessment, we should go ahead and keep that number flat. And by keeping that number flat, we go ahead and actually reduce what this number looks like. It's really a sales game of how you want to look at it. I look at it more from a conservative approach that this is the number of what the houses did go up, or what the average residential rate went up from our tax assessor. So I'd rather view it from that perspective. All right. So what makes up the increase? Because that's what we really want to know. The biggest part of the increase, and I have a pie chart after this, is our operations, our inside cap items. Our inside cap items equals $315,279.35. The next item is our contingency fund. If you go back and you look at, you can go on the website and take a look at it as well too, the past 5-6 years of the municipal budget, you're going to see that you've done emergency authorizations every year for the past 4 or 5 years. That's something, quite frankly, that I don't recommend you budget that way. An emergency authorization is that you have a problem this year, you say, okay, I'm going to approve it, but then I have to raise it in next year's budget. So when you go ahead and you take a look at, when we go ahead, as an example, or even this year, if we had authorized an emergency appropriation in 2019, before you do anything, before you factor in one salary and wage, before you factor in increasing utilities, before you factor in state pensions, before you factor in anything, you open up your books, and now you're already $100,000 in the hole. And to me, I don't believe that that's the right way to budget. If you look, one of the reasons that we, go over this as we go forward, last year, 2018, you authorized a $97,000 emergency appropriation. Primarily because of the fire department and because of police overtime. We worked very hard, and the council's aware of this when we're talking about police overtime as we go on. We worked very hard not to have an emergency appropriation going in for the 2020 budget. It's something that I should very, very strongly recommend. However, it's ultimately the council's decision on whatever they would like to do with that. But it's now budgeted for this year. I've added in a contingency fund that if something does happen, you have the funds available. So the first question, if I was sitting on that side of the aisle, is, well, what happens with the contingency fund if we don't use it, right? And is that just a blank check to go ahead and do anything you want with? So the money's there, so let's go ahead and spend it. That was the council person, what I would be asking. Let me give you both answers. Number one, let's hope we don't have to use a contingency fund, because it's only there for emergencies. It's not there as another general spending account, or it's there for unforeseen things. If there's an idea that you guys have been kicking around and there's a thought process behind it, and you're not sure you want to do it or not do it, or where you are with that, you can go ahead and budget for it, and going on down the road, if you decide to say, okay, let's pull the trigger, let's go ahead and do that, we'll do it. What happens if you have no emergencies and you have nothing that changes? That money lapses back into surplus, so it doesn't hurt you. And actually provides a cushion for you a little bit into going into the next year's budget as well, too. Statutory expenditures. I have to tell you that, yes, sir.
Excuse me, before you leave the contingency, you said last year we had $100,000 worth of emergency that are falling into this budget?
That falls off of this budget. If you do the appropriation, if you offer, in 2018, the council authorized the emergency.
Okay, so we put it to the 2019.
So when it's 2019 budget. In 2019, we had no emergency, so that number actually falls off the budget. So it's a net decrease.
Okay, how'd you come up with the 68,000 contingency?
That's a great question. It's a yes. Fair answer. If I go back and I take a look at your emergencies, have ranged anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000. I kind of split the middle of the road with that. You could put it at 50. You could put it at 125. I think going ahead and putting in that dollar amount kind of meets the middle. If that's something that the council and the Citizen Budget Committee want to go ahead and tweak, it's something that we certainly could. But I think when you look at what you guys have done in the past, and quite frankly, the amount of transfers that you've had to do, and then again, primarily to fire and police, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Okay, but one more question, I guess it's for not only you, but for the council. Have you all come to a definition of what an emergency is?
So, an emergency, in my mind, an emergency authorization is, and let's go back to what some of the problems or some of the emergencies that you've authorized before. You've had issues with your fire trucks that have, one of the big ones that have caused $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 repairs. You've had, in police, you've had, and police is a big one that we're going to talk about, in police, you've exceeded your overtime dollar amount because you've had 2 or 3 police officers either leave, injured, extended time being out of work, which then caused other officers to come in and work, which then blew your overtime budget. So those are the kind of things that I would need in that category, however, that's ultimately up to you.
You also have incidents where you would have a natural catastrophe, heavy snowstorm, hurricane, windstorm that required overtime from DPW and things like that. Is that a contingency, or is that budgeted into their salaries already?
So let me answer it 2 ways. You could utilize it for those items. I don't think anybody necessarily budgets for what happens if we have a hurricane scene, because then we would hyperinflate what our budgets would be. There is, under both police and public works, there is overtime that's allocated into those individual lines. How much of which none of them changed for the 20 budget. You could increase those lines as well too if you chose. But no, there isn't a defined school of thought associated with what you're looking for.
Real quick, back in 2003, you actually adopted a dedication by RIDE as a trust fund, where you can set money aside for storm recovery, and you've been doing that every year. So as of December 31st, there was about $87,000 in an account for that reason, in a trust account. So if there is some disaster, emergency, something like that, we can tap into that reserve in order to fund it. So it's not, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the budget this year. If that was zero, I would say maybe we want to put some kind of contingency in there for storm reserves. And $87,000 goes pretty quickly when you have a disaster. Generally, if it's the state of emergency, we'll get funding from FEMA, maybe 2 or 3 years later. And we have one. So it covers, it covers that back.
And also with that contingency, that's one of the areas too that you don't go ahead and fund it, you can beef up those reserve accounts as well. The statutory expenditures, as I show here, were down $1,700. Full confession, we made a mistake. I'd rather raise my hand now and take the beatings now. We did all the books, we printed everything, I typed it all in the spreadsheet, we got it all done, and quite frankly, we left out the increase of Social Security, which is about $40,000, which I will address on the back end. So I'd rather full disclosure, and while I'm at full disclosure, this is something that you typically clean up in the budget on the end, and $2.01 off on 17 million balance. If anybody goes home and gets on the calculator and I look at it, full disclosure.
Yeah, right.
I'm telling you, our budget committee, they go above and beyond.
If I digress for a second, I go back to, because really you don't know how I came up through the trenches, as a department head, I would battle with my CFO quite frequently. Remember we was doing a purchase order, we were buying 3 or 4 trucks at one time. Trucks, the light bar, the plow, the pumps, this, the that, the da. It was like, I don't know, $353,971.12. And I was off by 2 cents. And she made me redo the whole purchase order and the whole, and I gave her $1 and I said, yeah, I'm good for the next year, process repeat. And she wasn't over second for that. So the library itself has a couple things going on. The library has 2 accounts set up into the budget. That was kind of new for me. I think you put it all together, but when in Rome, do as the Romans. The library has 2 employees that are retiring, who are also retiring this year. And all the details on the library spreadsheet associated with that. So we budgeted for their $585 into the budget. We've also been working with the library director. We've also tried to adjust the salaries downward for the new starting salary to try to help offset some of that cost. Staying with the library, for their operations budget, they did ask for an increase for $5,000 on electronic books, which we'll get into more detail, as I said, later on. And their utility costs or electric costs is higher than what was budgeted previously before, so we went through and adjusted some of the other lines, but there is an increase associated with that.
Did you get the sewer?
No, I'm getting to the sewer, because the sewer seems to be the old-time favorite here, from what I understand. Last year, one of your biggest increases in your municipal budget was the sewer. And trying to get a number from the BCUA, as I understand it, Alan went over there, 98 pounds of him, and went to see the executive director, put him in a headlock and tried to get the number, and he still couldn't get it. Through some backdoor conversations, I've been able to get your increase. Still needs to be broken out between debt service and operation, but you're going up 7% in your sewer. 7% in your sewer, and your Hackensack Paramus, I budgeted at the same percentage, figuring that it would follow suit. And this is, again, as I understand it, council has had this conversation before. I'm sure we're going to have it again. The mayor and I had a pretty healthy conversation regarding it. If we have the low-lying towns, like River Edge, and if you have a wet season, you're getting what they call INI, which is infiltration into your sewer lines, which jacks up your usage. The BCUA actually came in at a 0% budget this year, when our usage went up. Came in at a 0% increase, but our usage went up. So, as an aside, the mayor and I and our engineer and our public works director are going to go to the BCUA, get a nice tour of the facility, and some conversations with the executive director in a nice way, in an understanding way, but to see what possibilities there are going further, going into the future rather, of being able to try to offset those increases. In talking to our engineer, one of the biggest problems, how you ultimately would do it, you sleeve all your pipes. The cost of sleeving all your pipes, as from what he told me, they did that in a section of time years ago, and the cost was enormous, millions and millions of dollars. And just for clarity's sake, I'm not 100% sure whether it's here or in another town that he did it, but he said that he had done part of a town that was affected, and it was upwards of $20 million. So when you take a look at the ROI on it, you plan for the 7 to 10% increases, or do you make a capital investment and go to offset?
Can you explain a little bit more what Steve means?
So, you have a pipe, and you run basically another pipe within it. They call it a sleeve.
How does that lower our usage?
Because if you can't share on your connections, what's happening is you're having water infiltrate through your connections of the pipe. And by sleeving it, you're basically putting in, it's like building a new sewer system.
I may not have understood what you said before, I apologize. Did you say that we were basing our numbers off of Hackensack and Farmers numbers?
The BCUA numbers came in at 7%. Okay. The Hackensack Paramus, I'm going to base that off of the 7% as well too, because we haven't gotten that.
Okay.
So figuring that the BCUA went up 7, the likelihood is that they'll probably be around the same increase.
I was just asking, thinking if they were bigger and you were smaller.
No. We have 2 different sewer bills we pay. One we have the numbers for, one we don't have the numbers for. So the one we have the numbers for, I'm using it to pay on the other one. Library, we talked about sewer. I'm sorry?
Library listed twice?
Who is?
Library.
Yes. The library is listed twice because it's actually listed twice in your budget. It's a good question. That's why I said it's kind of new.
Alan had told the council when I first got on that he did it that way because he said there were certain, in his opinion, certain accounting advantages to breaking it out. Also, there was a time when the council, more than 8 years ago, just before I got on, were thinking about shutting down the library, and something that, thank God, didn't happen, to save money. And so there was a whole thought that if that was going to happen, we wanted to break out the different costs so that they would appear differently if that ever happened. We're never going to do that. So there was some thinking 8 to 20 years ago that Alan was working on this, about how he was going to put it in the ledger, how he was going to have it charged to in cap, out of cap, and capital, non-capital. Plus there was, as I said 10 years ago, a question about whether we should be paying for a library. And so there was a whole question about, well, what is really budget, or what is really salaries, what is healthcare, what is this and that. So they made some adjustments. Now, I can't give you any more detail because I'm not an expert in that, but that was some of what was explained to us when I came on the council 8 years ago.
And if we're not having that conversation of possibly posting it anymore, would you want to reconsider putting it online?
I mean, you could, but
fit in any way?
no.
Oh.
No, I mean, if you actually look on, I actually did a spreadsheet on that, of putting it all together, just so when you look at cost of library, you can see what the total cost is. Rather than trying to take what's over here and what's over here and then not get together as far as increases. And again, tying back into that point, we tried to keep the budget, this year's budget, as far as chart of accounts and how things were set up and exactly, or as close to exactly as what has been done before in the past. You know, with new people coming in, it takes a while to get used to, and we wanted to try to go ahead and keep as much parity associated with that. In next year's budget, we'll take a look at it. Even some of the department had said on the individual lines, like, there's no usage for this line, can we get rid of it? You'll see a lot of lines within the broken detail budget that have zeros in them, 5, 6, 7 lines that have zeros in them. Others that are kind of renamed, but it still kept the title there. Again, that's more of an internal housekeeping, but again, I try to keep everything as close to the same as possible.
The two library accounts, is there any, is that considered, is that the 1/3 of a mill that is required statutory for us to pay for the library, and then the additional amount that the town kicks into the library for their funding?
So that's not how these accounts are split up. As the mayor was saying before, that is exactly why, actually, they moved it. Most likely what had happened, whenever it was, 20 years ago, all the ancillary costs associated with the library, electric, social security, all the fringe benefits, and overhead costs associated with running the actual building and operations were most likely within the tax, inside tax. When the law changed, preventing you from raising the budget inside of tax over a certain amount, a lot of municipalities were facing a lot of cap pressure. And in order to move forward with, even keeping the appropriations steady, you have to move things out of cap if they were eligible to do so. And the library expenses are eligible to be outside of tax, so that's most likely what happened. The 1/3 of a mill that you're referring to is actually on the revenue side. That's the minimum amount that you're required to raise in taxation for the library, which is then offset with that appropriation. So it's built into the aggregate number. If I pull up the 1/3 of a mill requirement, tell you what that is in just 1 second. The total is $642,638.10. So anything over that dollar amount, and you'll see that dollar amount on the budget document on the revenue side.
647?
$642,638.10. So anything over that is above and beyond what we're required to. And then the short answer to this question before is, can we consolidate? There are municipalities that have one line that say municipal library, and that's it. And sometimes that matches the 1/3 of a mill, sometimes that's above and beyond. And then on our internal records, so in this case it's Evans, we would have a breakout of all the sub-accounts associated with that, similar to what you see on your budget document. So if we were ever asked for a report on or the accounting behind what made up the total dollar amount, we can print that out of our internal systems from the public budget document, which is the municipal library.
The grants that we showed actually into your budget book, we're going to update that. The grants really have no impact on the budget because of the fact that there's an appropriation and an expenditure show. So before we finalize the budget, we'll add in all the rest. Zero negative. Debt service, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this. On capital, we had a bond. So you can do 2 bonds, Chris? 2 bonds, 3 bonds? 2 bonds drop off. So we saw a decrease into our debt service. This year we will be going out for a bond. So next year that will be increased. So what you don't want to do, and what our Chris and mine's goal to try to provide to you is you really don't want to yo-yo budget. And what I mean by that is, the goal that we try to present and try to keep you at is a level budget. A level budget with a slow increase. Dropping down to here, increasing it here, dropping down to here, it's, in my opinion, it's not proper budgeting. I'm going to give the example since you guys haven't heard it. The council's heard me talk about, certainly Councilman Coughlin's heard me talk about it 50 times. The best example I can give for that is the gas. If gas goes up 2 cents a year, who notices? If gas goes up to 1 year 25 cents, everybody's screaming. So that's, one of the things that we try to do is to try to level out your budget. We'll talk a little bit more, but you see where you have a decrease in your debt service, you see there's a corresponding increase into your capital improvement fund. And we'll get into that. So that brings you up to your deferred charges. I talked about before the deferred charge, the emergency. There's several items that make up the deferred charge category, but if you look here, the $85,337.43 is because that emergency came off the books. So, which leaves you with $421,927.82. When you then go ahead for your new total, you get your reserve fund collected taxes. Your total expenditure gives you $17,078,873.57, minus your use of surplus, minus your use of revenues, minus your receipt of delinquent taxes, gives you $356,802.87. And that's how we came up with the a little shy under the $100 increase. And again, these numbers, this whole thing is up to you guys and what ultimately you want and where you want to be. So an overview of, this isn't an all-extensive list, but I kind of wanted to try to show you, I'm a really big pie graph kind of guy, and I had like 10 pie graphs in my presentation, and my wife, who's the smarter one in the family, came back and said, oh, you just can't put that many in there. And one with, 100 different categories, and it's like, no, stop. So I settled on this one, total overview of net increases. And this reflects basically what I just went over. And it's broken down by percentages. Salary, everybody good up to this point? Anybody need a break? Okay. Salary and wage impacts. Right now the borough is currently in negotiation with the Public Works and police unions, in consultation with our Labor Council and our Finance Committee. There have been dollars allocated into the budget of where we believe we're ultimately going to settle at, or quite frankly, where council is willing to settle at. Because it's an active negotiation, right now I'm really not going to get into the details of that. I'm sure you can all understand. I'm sure I joke with the PBA president. Who's actually headed down to the conference right now. She's going to film a video first thing on Monday to see if I talk anything about police, so you can figure out what your increase is, and you kind of laugh. But both of those items are into the budget. So what I'm explaining is that I believe that we budget accordingly to where we ultimately will end up. Okay. Non-contractual employees. That was approved at the beginning of the year, the 2% increase. So the next item goes back to where we talked about emergencies, right? And one of the things that I don't like to do, the emergencies. And the second thing that personally, and again, it's ultimately a council decision, I'm a guy who hates fully or partially funding positions. And the thought process behind that, again, is, so I open up the books next year, as we did this year, and before you do anything, if you've hired those employees, you've now got to make up the difference before you do anything. Example, so an employee costs $40,000, he's not going to start for 3 months. I'm going to take $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 off, and I'm going to fund him at $33,000. When I opened the books in 2020, I now have a $7,000 hole. So I really try to, I really recommend to councils to try not to do that. There are some cases in where you have to do that, and it's cap problems, or you're just not comfortable with where you are with your tax number. But I really recommend that you try to stay away from it. You want to set yourself up every year when you're budgeting that you're not starting out in a hole. You had one public works position and 2 police officers that were partially funded. In this year's budget, they're fully funded. The 585 payouts I've already talked about for the library position, the BA and the payroll clerk. Health benefits, Alan dropped off from health benefits. I don't take health benefits from the borough, so it saves you about $25,000. Also, in the health benefit account, we've gone through, and there's a detail that I provide for everybody in one of the spreadsheets. I've reduced the amount of that line to more accurately reflect what I'm doing. Still there's some money in that line based upon a projection of the open positions that we have and those positions on a family plan. Retirements and resignations, again, that's one of the things, as I mentioned, that affect the budget. You've got a payroll clerk who resigned, which from a financial perspective was a benefit. Not to say her leaving was, but just for some dollars. Alan's resignation, you have the 2 library individuals that will be resigning this year. And again, as I mentioned, you have, currently right now, you have 2 open labor positions and a supervisor position that I know council is anxiously waiting to move forward with. Once we get through this budget process, we'll certainly go ahead and address it. But those are the kind of things that affect your budget. One of the other things that we've done, and this is goes back to a philosophy, some people budget to a penny on salary and wages. We came in pretty close to the penny, and I'm pretty sure that 2001 census deal with rounding issues, but I can't swear to it. We established a salary adjustment account, especially for this year. I don't know if you ultimately need to have that going forward, but with 2 contracts that are in play, with Chris and I taking a look at the numbers, we wanted to put a couple dollars aside in case there is a problem. You know, that we're off on a calculation, that it was a rounding issue, because we've done pretty much all of the budgeting based upon down to the penny. So it gives you a little bit of cushion. Again, if you don't spend it, it could last us back into surplus. And as I said before, I'm not necessarily sure going forward you'll need that. But for this year, I want to go ahead and put that in there. Questions on salary and wages?
I got one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is there a line or a fund for contingency retirements or resignations where somebody would retire and or leave and have a longer than normal amount of sick time, benefit time, whatever,
So,
would have to be paid out?
great question. So, for sick time,
And I don't know who or what that is.
well,
First, that's really not my question. The question is more, are we somewhat prepared for this? Do we budget for it?
So for sick time, the council has elected that we get, employees get 1 year of sick time. So there's no payout associated with that. They're eligible up to 1 year. So you don't bank sick time, so there's no payout associated with that. On vacation and 585 and other issues, there is an account established. I believe that number has 48,000 in it. 57,000. And then there's a question of how much you fund. That's one of the trust accounts. For the past couple of years, you haven't funded it. One of the big issues, or one of the increases to last year's budget, really was going ahead and dealing with Alan's payoff. Whether you raise it in that current year, or you go ahead and you add money in, or you budget for it in each individual year, or at the end of the year, if you see that you have money available, much like the snow trust, you can transfer money into. But I think the overarching question is, are we on a yearly basis have a plan saying every year we're gonna put $10,000 into this account, $20,000 into the account? That has not been the past practice.
You got a recommendation?
Well,
I think it really comes down to a result of operations.
Brandon,
Yes, sir.
if I'm not mistaken, we really only have one other employee that is grandfathered like Alan was. Am I not mistaken there?
You
That's
have-
what Alan always told us. It was really only two people who were grandfathered with a payout because of previous sick time policy.
Alan didn't get any pay from sheriff. He got it for a vacation, and he got it for the 585.
Yeah.
You have several of the police officers that do, and a couple of the department heads, I believe, have it as well, too.
But big payouts, I think there's really only one employee left that would get a big payout. I mean, I don't think there's in other words, what I'm trying to say is I don't think there's a tremendous amount of,
Need for it.
yeah.
That's a great question, though, and I think let me take a little more to find out. It's a great question. Let me see how many we actually have. Let me get a definitive list, and we can take a look at it.
Yeah.
I was gonna follow up, you know, what the ultimate payout could possibly be. And how you fund that. What do you fund?
So the short answer is, at the end of each year, we do have to have a liability declaration. We are still working on gathering the information. I'm not 100% sure what records Alan used to establish those figures. I did find the number from 2018, but that's including comp time and other time that is most likely not going to be paid out. But that's the cap that's established for that trust fund, the accumulated reserve, which, similar to the storm recovery, adopted a resolution back in 2002 to establish. If you look in the budget document, there's an appropriation for $5. The reason why it's $5 is that it opens up the appropriation so that it exists, so that transfers can go into it. That's not uncommon to have something like that. If you have an employee unexpectedly resign, that was not foreseen during the budget process, and we have leftover money in a salary and wage account. That's an opportunity to transfer it into that accumulated assets account and reserve it for future liabilities. That's something that's still in the works. Establishing that December 31st, 2019 balance number in order to help accommodate figuring all of this out, since everything was on paper. And for the last 6 to 8 months, we've been migrating everything over to a computerized system. A couple of meetings ago, the governing body approved moving to a new payroll service that also has time tracking associated with it, where the departments would then submit all of their time on a daily basis per payroll. So once we establish this 1/1/20 number, it'll be tracked in the computer moving forward, and there'll be no question about what the balances are exactly. And then we tie a dollar amount to it, and then determine whether or not they're even eligible to be paid. Because when we do the accumulated assets number, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're eligible to receive the payment. For example, we don't have payment for sick time, but the state restricted sick time for all employees hired. Don't quote me on the date. I think it was sometime in 2010. Anybody hired after that is capped at $15,000 no matter what. So we would have to put a couple of formulas in to determine who's eligible.
And it's not being the budget for you.
The accumulated absences, no, we have $5 from that.
Okay.
Plus any payments that are due this year.
So there'll be some increases.
So that's a philosophical question. You can pay them as you go, You can set aside money each year for them, assuming they're going to come. But you don't know if the employee is going to use that time before they retire, and you don't actually have to pay it out. So it's more of a philosophical question, similar to the storm recovery. You know, these trust accounts are not required. They're just available to you. So you can fund them at zero, or you can fully fund them up to the maximum possible liability, but you may get to need it. So you don't really want to overtax to set up a reserve that you may never touch. So there's a little bit of a balancing act there.
All right, operating expenditure impact. One of the biggest things, and you've heard me harp on this, is that in 2019 we did not issue an emergency. We have police overtime, and I'll get into it a little bit now. We'll talk more about it later. In your police overtime, all of the borough projects are being charged against that account and then ultimately reimbursed, as well as your outside duty. Your outside duty is set up in the budget basically as a bridge loan. There's money allocated in the budget that acts as kind of fronting the money until the money comes in from the contractor. And we've had some problems with that because the police get paid when the job is done. If we're still waiting on money to come in, we have to front that money up front. And we talked about, and I'll get into it a little bit later, we talked about some ways to go ahead and deal with that, that kind of gets out of that bridge loan and ultimately freeing up some available dollars for police overtime. We've established a contingency fund for 2020. The next item is one of the major staples of the budget. When you go back and you look at our grants that we have processed through the county, we have missed out on what I believe are opportunities. The freeholders have established an open space trust fund. I believe the council has a very good working relationship with the freeholder board. Right now, the open space trust fund is primarily being utilized, more than half of it is being utilized for maintenance. And those of you who don't know, as a department head I've made reference to before, I was the director of Parks and Recreation. This is kind of my wheelhouse. It's about 20 years that I've been with, 16 years. And really what we wanted to go ahead and do is how can we maximize our opportunity to get more money from the freeholders and have the funding available there to go ahead to get those dollars. And the budget that we put together does that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the big impacts of the budget that took effect on the operations side is COA. We've gone through pretty much all of our COA work that needs to be done, at least from a legal perspective, and in dealing with the judge. Now we've got to go ahead and do some overlay zones and a few other things associated with that. However, it's a big increase, about $25,000 of professional services that we need to go ahead in order to wrap that up. The good news is that once that's done this year, that should not be a reoccurring cost for several years.
One second. Does the Budget Committee understand what COLA stands for and what Raymond is referencing? Just want to make sure, because sometimes these terms... So COLA stands for Council of Affordable Housing, and there has been a Supreme Court case that says each town has to provide certain percent of affordable housing, or at least the potential for affordable housing. And it's a very big ticket item, and every town has to hire, professionals to help us assess and to negotiate with the state. And so, and then what happens is if a developer comes in, certain percentage of whatever they build has to have affordable housing within it. Raymond, do you want to add anything to that? Yeah.
Would that be directly or indirectly related to an out-of-rural mandate?
Yeah.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is. We've had a pretty favorable ruling for COA. And again, the $47,000 that I referred to really relates to developing the plans as a result of what the judge ultimately said that we could go ahead and do. So, BCUA and Hackensack I talked about already. At the time, it was estimated at a 5% increase. The ultimate increase was 7%. One of the other issues that we've had here is IT has not been a priority for the borough. And what I mean by a priority, meaning the funding put behind having an IT professional. This year, the council hired a contracted professional, so it had an impact on the budget. But I think we have noticed many differences already. And again, I think every VA has their shtick, for lack of a better term. One of my big things deals with, I think, like big screen. Next year, hopefully, we'll have TV screens up there and we'll be able to look at and have a little better presentation. But conversation for another day.
That's a contracted employee.
Correct. No benefits. It's an impact of the operations. Yeah.
And it's including the maintenance of the land or all the other equipment for the
We pay him a yearly contract to deal with any of our IT issues. That doesn't include, for example, if a server goes down, we need to buy a new server, the dollars aren't allocated in there. But to the cloud, I won't respond because that's been some really in-depth conversations that I've had with council. I don't want to digress too much here, but Edmonds is now on the cloud. Our Edmonds package is on the cloud. Our finance, our tax service, our tax collection is on the cloud. We're getting ready to migrate to 365, which will be hosted on the cloud. Our SBL, which is our construction software, is migrating out to the cloud. So I'm a huge proponent of the cloud. There's different rules or different thoughts. Some people like to do a hybrid. Some people like to do everything to the cloud. I think we've gone to the hybrid stage, and ultimately, I see us 3-4 years down the road of everything out of the cloud. Because it's no muss, no fuss. I don't have to worry about maintaining a server. And again, I can spend hours just on this topic, but it's something, technology is one of my big things that I think is how you better service a community. And it's a priority for the council to go ahead and do it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Sorry.
As you're talking about this, are you talking about borough hall administration? Are you talking about the entire borough and their entire IT needs? Police department?
So it's really broken into two components. Police department had an IT professional already, and we had a whole host of IT guys when I first got here, along with some of the volunteers. I certainly appreciate their effort to volunteer, working on our IT systems as well too. The IT professional that we have now, which is actually the same as the police, will look at the police as one entity and then everybody else, and the contract is for everybody else.
Okay, so the police have
The police have one.
Same person under different contract. Does this person also do?
It's a company.
In-house training?
They will. Matter of fact, one of the conversations that we had was regarding some of the safety protocols and things that you need to do to keep your documents and things secure or not go on certain websites. Once we roll over to the 365, he's going to go ahead and do a training for the entire borough. So the other trainings that he's not going to go ahead and sit down and teach Excel to each one. but, as it relates to IT security, we move on to that topic. And our goal, last thing about IT, the JIF puts out a set of reports. Everybody knows what the JIF is, Joint Insurance Fund. They put out a list of requirements, or, I wouldn't say necessarily requirements, but benchmarks that we want to try to go ahead and get to. Our goal with the new IT professional is to get to really the gold standard, the second level. And that's one of our goals for this year.
Because then if we ever do have a security breach, it reduces the amount of money we would have to spend before the JIF kicks in. So.
Yep. Outsourcing of the zoning position, we had a zoning officer leave, I guess, before I had come here. We have a alternate already in place, which is Burgess and Associates. This year, we have them continuing on. That may be, as I told now, that may be an opportunity for us to look as we move forward, whether we're getting our most bang for our buck, and let me just say that they are fantastic, but with the fantastic comes a cost. So that may be an opportunity for us to take a look at this year for next year's budget, but it did have an impact on this year's budget. And this is really a zero net sum game. Our engineer, Mr. Costa, who is, I believe, a great asset to the town. We had a different philosophy. I have a different philosophy in how I approach building with Rob. The way that was previously set up in the budget, it had a really tiny retainer and 17 different line items of where it could be charged to. And the council was saying to me, like every week we're getting another change order for this, change order increased by another 1,000, 3,000 over here. So at the end of the day, is what we've done is we've increased his retainer, and we've wiped out all of those other little accounts. And he understands that for a retainer, you do A, B, C, and D. Don't be expecting to send me a bill. You call for a sewer emergency, the guys are out there as part of your retainer. Now that is separate from projects. We do a road job, or a road job or a pipe replacement. That's separate. We typically handle that with capital anyway. But in the engineering budget, it's a zero net sum game in that. So it's just a different way of looking at it. And I think council's been pleased with not having to do 1,700 resolutions and trying to track those all the time. And the ladies that can assure you in the finance department are extremely happy from that. Any questions? We need a break? All right. So this isn't an all-inclusive list. There are more than just this. But one of the things I like to try to do is identify some of the things that are one-hit wonders and some of the things that will be a reoccurring. So some one-time items. We have $10,000 in there in the operating budget for the library grant. That's to have our architect associated with the treaty center help us go ahead and they put out a grant for libraries. He's going to help us write that grant. Within the community center, there was some discussion. I guess early on there was the thought process we were going to just do a prep kitchen. It's the council's desire to at least explore the cost estimates of doing more of a full-blown kitchen. In order to do a full-blown kitchen, you need to have a kitchen design. We've gone ahead and budgeted for that. As I mentioned before, you have the seventh payment for Allen. You were asking a minute ago about that account of where do we budget it to. Right now, we're budgeting it in the operating budget for $15,000 for his payout. It could come out of that other fund. And again, those are philosophical decisions. Again, another one was our payroll clerk. We had to go ahead and pay her out her severance at $585, and that was put into the budget. The Historical Society is looking to designate 2 houses in River Edge with a historical designation. If they do get the historical designation, again, that's just a one-time hit, and that's the attorney. So Next year, you wouldn't see that as a recurring item into the budget. They have an archivist right now that's looking to go ahead and to retire. So the thought process was to keep the archivist that they had and bring another individual in, train them, and then have them be the new archivist. So there's an impact to the budget, $1,500 there, but once that new archivist is in, then that budget would be reduced by the $1,500. Shade tree, various plantings. In their operating budget, they've asked, they have certain areas that they've identified where they want to be planting. That's been budgeted for. However, those will be done. Now, next year, they may come back and say, well, here's another 5 areas that we want. But as far as I look at it, that's a one-time hit for this year's budget, and ultimately, we'll see wherever council and the committee wants to go. You have that, the CIP, which we talked about, you have it coming up as an increase and then coming down as a decrease, which we'll talk about. The salary and wage fund, we talked about, or the adjustment of salary, yeah, the tax, adjustment of salary and wage fund. You had, one of the things that I did with the budgets is we've gone through and really kind of flushed the budgets out. My OBA used to say about scrubbing the budgets, and that, again, it goes back to philosophy, right? Like, are you better to keep more money in the individual budgets that perhaps have never been adjusted, or are you better to scrub the budgets down and then build up a contingency being based on that? I believe in the latter, but again, that's a philosophical decision. We had a farm executive that we used to have here. I guess that program has gone by the wayside, so that has been reduced.
Farm executive?
The farmer's market.
Oh, okay.
It's listed as a farm. Okay, am I wrong there? That's what it was. That's what it was in the budget. Under your code, the primary two issues of code and construction really were all tied around the zoning laws. It was budgeted in this account, then it was budgeted as an O&E, because we weren't sure, I guess when I got here, they weren't sure which way they were going to. And then I readjusted and put it back into construction, which is really where it needs to be. So, that's what those dollars are. There's a bunch of other little various increases and decreases that I put in there as well, too. Some of the recurring items that now have kicked into the budget. I mentioned about the IT, the software contract. You're going to have, what we're going to have now, as council tells me they don't want to do this anymore, you're going to have an IT professional. You're going to have a real IT professional, and that's going to be a cost that we budgeted for now, and that cost really shouldn't change. It may go up a little bit, but it's not that you're going to see it go away. You have the contracting zoning officer. Again, that is a recurring item. If you don't hire a person to do that job, then you're going to have that fee now into the budget, because it's a necessary item, so that will be there.
The software contract, 13A, is that the only cost involved in that, or is that a retainer, and they can charge if something falls outside of whatever the contract goes?
So I try to show you net increases and decreases on the sheet. Their contract, I'll pull it up for you, but it's a monthly fee to pretty much handle all of our computers, our servers, but if there is something that is out of the norm, that is not specified into the contract, yes, they can charge a fee for that.
It just seems like you're talking about an IT professional that you have quote hire, and I'm looking at 13,008 and saying, boy, that's a pretty big deal.
It's actually more than that. That's really a net.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
One question is,
Sure.
we have a very good trees, the shade tree committee. So who's making the trees around the overhead lines? Does it budget to the DPW to cut all the limbs and all the branches that may fall into the line and cause a problem?
Give me 1 second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, if,
Just to answer your question, if you go, and I'll read it out to you, but it's on tab number 2 under your operating budget. The IT contract for 12 months is at $1,420 a month, which is $17,040. The malware is, that fee that we have to pay is $1,260, and our off-site data storage is $1,200, which is $19,500. But the net impact is, comes down to the third one. Sorry.
It's just like a very low number. I just wanna make sure I-
Well, I think really overall, the police pay about $1,500 a month, I believe, so they're here. It's kind of, I guess in their mind, it's kind of the thought process, over here, we're dealing with the police, so picking up, walking over to the other side of the building, all in, it's almost a $40,000 contract, so it's not horrible. It's certainly not horrible from their end. To answer to your question on trees, your question is,
So we got the shade tree, we also have to maintain the trees around the forehead, no headlights. Is that the DPW budget or the PSAG does something with that?
so the trees that go near the power line is the responsibility of the utility company.
So PSAG does
Would be PSE&G. Nothing has changed as far as the operation associated with trees. There's still funding allocated in the budget, and the plan is for them to continue on doing what they were doing before. But PSE&G is the one that, or JCP now, depending upon who we have, will be the ones that come in and maintain the department by the law.
Well, the wires, they the wire fees, you know.
Well, they'll come in and cut the trees down, or bless the trees by the wires. But it's basically just a new plan. The shade tree budget, not only from the operation, but from the capital as well too, is for planting and maintenance. Okay? They work with, and stump grinding as well. I guess you could call that maintenance. But we have 2 guys that are dedicated pretty much to trees all the time on our operating budget on the public works. And they, obviously, we're very close together. Okay.
right,
Yes,
right.
sir.
Why is there a decrease in code enforcement and construction official?
So, let me get the exact numbers or an overall?
Overall,
Okay, so the overall is, when we went ahead, when I first got here, you had the money allocated into salary and wages because you had an employee. Okay? Under, I believe it was under construction. Then a move was made, under code. Then a move was made to put it under, we went from having an employee to having a contracted individual. So that money then was put into the O&E account, okay? Since that time, that was 2019, since that time, we've readjusted it to go under construction. So both of those lines under code have dropped, the S&W and the O&E. Okay? Now you get into the construction world, now you put them back into the construction department, and it's not under S&W because they have money in S&W there as well too. It got put under to O&E. So if you wanted to look at, let's take a minute, you want to go into the specifics of it?
no, that's fine.
Okay. It's actually, if you look on your code tab and your construction tab, it's delineated out exact dollars and where. Okay? It's not a reduced in services if that's...
Right.
Yeah, it's not a reduction in services in either area. It's more of an accounting issue.
Yeah.
The next couple items, again, I talked about open space and how we're looking to go ahead and move some of the items that were previously in open space back into the operating budget. So we've gone ahead and done that. There's a big number here. I don't know if you can see that. It's the largest number, the largest increase that you have in the municipal budget. It relates to police. And it's an anticipated number of what we think the entire police department, not just the union employees, would go up, $205,000. DPW going up, utilities and insurance.
What's the aid to senior citizens increase for?
Two things. One, food.
Okay.
You want to keep the seniors happy, they need to eat.
Uh-huh.
In my senior group, I have to tell you, there's one group I never messed with. It was always a priority to keep my seniors happy, and the best way that you could keep your seniors happy was food. They did spend more money on food this year than in the past, and the other item associated was another $1,000 for the temple for the lease agreement.
All right.
So that went up from 18 to 19?
Correct. Questions? Okay. Everybody good? Yes. Everybody good? Everybody need a break? Okay. Getting into some of the net increases and decreases. So what I did is I went through basically all the lines in the budget, and I listed out the majority of lines that had an impact. I listed out what the decrease was, what the increase was, and what the primary reason was. If you go back into the detail of your spreadsheet, you'll see all the reasons, the detail in your division. You'll see all the reasons why numbers went up or why numbers went down. And I do apologize for the tiny print, but in order to fit it on one page, that's how I had to do. Okay. Under administration, it was $36,686 that the overall S&W budget went down. Under administration O&E went up $6,695. This line was reduced by the foreign VA salary no longer being calculated with the exception of the 585. Under O&E relates to the IT that I had referred to before. There was no decreases on the public information. There was an increase of $13,935. And again, remember, when I get into the individual lines, each individual budget, we've gone through and tweaked lines, so you may have been able to offset. As I mentioned before, you had a $17,000, $18,000 contract with the IT guy, or IT professional, but I was able to go ahead, or we were able to go ahead and reduce some of the other lines. So really, what the net increase is what I'm showing on the screen. Looking at the net increase or decrease. The clerk's line went down $1,200. He went up about $3,600. The net impact was $2,367. The largest line, the largest or the biggest swing in the budget, in the operating budget, was really under finance. You had a lot of stuff going on there. You had Alan coming off the books. You had Chris going on the books. You had a new payroll. And let me talk about payroll for a second. The payroll position, we were paying $46,000 for a part-time employee, plus your fringe costs. We've now been able to contract that out. So it costs about $22,000, so we saved about $20,000 in that line itself. But that line had kind of the biggest adjustment or the biggest decrease out of any of the lines that we have. And again, I keep coming back to these are overviews. Every one of these details are provided in your book. Okay? So financial administration went down $95,357.12. Under revenue administration, my guess is, did the borough used to have additional personnel and tax?
Please remember, Ellen. I don't remember.
Because that number was budgeted at like $60,000, and really the need of that is like $45,000. And again, I'm giving you off, the official numbers are into the budget book. I'm not really sure why that was that way, but that number has been adjusted downwards, $14,000. And again, that goes back to that conversation, and we're going to be harping on it. You bring the budgets down and then set up a contingency, or you leave the budgets flat and then you can go ahead and transfer at the end.
So just, that's the other philosophy was Alan's philosophy. He used to like to hide everything, funds all over the place. And then when budget season came around, it was like it was a scavenger hunt, because Alan would say, we have no money, but then, different people would look and say, well, don't we have this ordinance, don't we have money left here, don't we have extra money in this line? And here, you guys can remember, went to look at individual lines but that was his philosophy, and we're not saying that's a bad one, this is a different philosophy, and this is what we're trying out.
Okay, legal went up a small increase, $2,000. One of the things that we did in legal, again, where I talked about having the multiple certifications that we did for engineering. At the beginning of this year for legal, all of our legal services, we did more of a blanket certification. So it gets set up in Edmonds and then set up as a drawdown, rather than having 20 resolutions throughout the year with another $3,000 here and $2,000 there. It sets it up. It sets up in the beginning and makes life easier for everyone. The Historical Society, I touched on a little bit there. You have the additional fees for the archivist, the $1,300, and then $2,000. I think, I'm sorry, $4,000. There was a moving in that line, but basically we went ahead and we were able to put the funds for the archivist into the designation of the two houses. The dollar rounding represents some additional attorney fees, because if you're going to designate a house historical, you need to go ahead and hire an attorney to do that. I got those numbers from our borough attorney. Land use board was basically nothing. Construction, as I mentioned before, we kind of talked about, construction went down. Then there was a $41,000 increase in there, and that addressed the zoning officer going back into construction and fully funding that position. Code went down $5,800 and $15,000 to try to offset that increase in that position. Insurance, your insurances. Your insurance, your net increase was $11,674 after you take the dividend. And again, I go back to nuances of every VA, everybody else kind of handles it different. This was kind of a project to try to understand how this whole thing was set up. Personally, thank Ezio for his help with this, because there are a lot of different ways you can handle your dividend check. You can anticipate it as a revenue in the budget. You can let it go into Myrna. You can budget X dollars amount and then have the JIF go ahead and take the dividend check off the bill. So again, creating this from scratch is trying to learn of how it was done before in the past. At the end of the day, how we're handling it moving forward, at least for this year, is to follow the suit of what they did in the previous year, and they had it deducted off of the bill. They had it deducted off of the bill, so our actual bill came in low.
I don't fully understand the insurance, the wording that you have here. It says it represents an increase in health benefits after an estimated dividend check is deducted. And I'm assuming, I'm understanding the dividend check coming out of JIF, but the health benefits seem to be a different line.
Again, it should be, my understanding, it should be both. It's workers' comp, and
The
it's
dividends coming from the property casualty side, workers' comp, and not the health care. Okay. All right, thank you.
Fire department, I tell you, fire department is one of the ones that we're talking about adjusting. It actually, one of their lines adjusted dramatically. It went up about $20,000. And that line is a vehicle maintenance line. That is one of the big issues that we've had as a borough, or one of the big challenges that the borough has had over the years. By reconfiguring all of these other individual lines, we were able to allocate an additional $20,000 to that line, but the net increase to the overall budget was about $6,000. $6,000. Uniform safety is $600. Public works repair and maintenance. This is the line, I'm only pausing for a second because I'm thinking about the union contract now. This line ultimately reflects increases associated with what we forecasted the contract to be. It takes into consideration fully funding the labor position. And it takes into consideration the movement of the supervisor up to, moving of the employee up into the supervisor position. So, you've got your wages, you've got your steps, and you've got your fully funding the overtime. Other work public function has to do with, that's really our tree line. And the training for the individuals from Public Works has gone up. And also they need to send another employee to that training as well too, small increase. Parking lot maintenance, S&W, nothing on the O&E side. Jason told me that the cost of thermoplast has gone up, and now what some of the requirements are that the Public Safety Committee is looking for as it relates to line striping has gone up as well too, what their needs are. So we've increased that budget. We've increased that budget by $2,300. Recycling. Recycling is kind of a big umbrella here. Now, a lot of things roll into this budget. But let me kind of talk of some general overviews. Recycling is going to be one of our biggest problems in the future. The Recycling Trust Fund has some money in it. There's no question about that. But the cost of what recycling, before we used to get money back for all of our hard efforts, the win these days is a push. It doesn't cost us. Or very little, I should say. So we're not generating the kind of revenue that we used to generate before for revenue for recycling, and that revenue used to come in and offset the cost of us doing the various different recycling. What I've taken a look at doing is kind of a hybrid of increase the recycling budget a little bit. I'm still using the trust, and I'm going to look to spoon, my thought process is to spoon feed the revenue into that account over time. I go back to the taxes. I go back to the gas tax. It goes up 2% every year, it's not an issue. We get hit with it and we draw our recycling trust down to nothing, and then the full burden is on the taxpayer, bam. So I've done some small, I've added in a couple dollars into that budget, and we're gonna have to monitor the market.
So we have how many years left on our contract before we have to?
I think we're just getting actually ready to, on the garbage, I don't want to give you wrong information.
But it's a couple of years, right?
The garbage I know is a couple of years. I'm not sure about the recycle. So that's one and the same.
Okay.
So I'm talking with Jason and Lisa about anything associated with public works. That's what they're really most worried about, is the costs associated with the recycling and the tipping fees that we're not getting what we used to get. So I was able to go ahead to do a nominal increase associated with that. Again, by adjusting some of the other lines, but I'm going to continue to spoon feed that unless you guys tell me differently, if you don't want to do that as we go forward. Building and grounds is up net $1,000 increase. That's for the public works employee. Vehicle maintenance. Pardon?
Talk about that recycling, where that goes.
Where it physically goes, or where you think the trend
When it goes away,
Yeah,
which it will go,
it will go away. I foresee.
5 years, less.
You're talking about when the trust fund has no money left in it?
When people stop paying you for recycling. And
They're-
it just
they're-
becomes a
that's-
disposable fee.
Yeah, they're pretty close to that
Yeah,
now.
right.
I have other municipalities that their contract expired this year, we're getting hit really hard, so it's
Yeah.
just a matter of when the contract expires. I've got others that still have 5 years left on their contract and they're on borrowed time right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a significant,
Yeah.
right, it's a hauling expense at that point, it's not recycling.
Correct.
Well,
We're not getting
Falling and dumping.
I mean, and that's why I think it's better now that we start taking a proactive approach to go ahead and try to offset some of those costs, rather than laying it on the trust down to nothing, and then get hit with, a loan. Vehicle maintenance, $3,000 of that, of that O&E cost really is a decrease in the fireman's budget. We transferred $3,000 over from, or reduced the level of funding which the fire budget received over, and we moved that money over into the vehicle maintenance account, because the public works guys or the public works mechanics are now going to take care of all the chief sprinkles. And that was, quite frankly, not even my decision. It was a conversation between the public works director and the fire chief. So they think they can handle that in-house rather than paying someone, or the fire department paying someone to do it. Why not? Again, these are all nominal. In the seniors, I talked about it, right? Recreation commission, and you'll see in a lot of the recreation lines has some of the higher increases, some of the middle ground increases, because we've moved some of the items, as I mentioned before, from open space back into the operating budget. Celebration of public activities. Really used to be there was $5,000 in the recreation budget. If you're going to have a celebration of public activities, previously had $150 funded in the line. I guess you guys didn't celebrate much here previously. Moved that revenue. I moved $5,000 from the recreation budget into celebration of public activities and increased that line a little bit as well too. I know there's a new cultural committee established. I know they're looking to go ahead and to do some activities. So I've added a couple $1,000s into that to be able to give them the funds to be able to do that. Utilities. Utilities have bumped up somewhat. Gas and diesel. No one really knows where that is headed. With all of the turmoil going on in the world, I think it's prudent to increase those numbers. Last year, we didn't get an increase as well, too. Also, we know that, knock on wood, that our community center will be under construction this year. And you know that we're going to have some increases in utilities associated with that as well, too. Originally, I had this number at 5560 in the increase. I dropped it down to try to offset some other increases as well. That's part of the reason why I moved utilities up. Sewer, again, sewer is a pretty self-explanatory one. Of that, the biggest increase there is we had for years there was we have one pipe that flows into Hackensack. Hackensack, and there was an agreement, there was a kind of a pending agreement that has been hanging around for a while of what we were going to pay them versus whether it was ours or if it was a healthy conversation. At the end of the day, the largest part of that increase in that line really addresses that one line that goes in there. We entered into an agreement on a sliding scale that council blessed to pay for that line, for that line. Salary adjustment account, as I mentioned before to you, we added $5,000 into that line item. And again, that picks up any miscellaneous things we got going on with salary and wages. So our total decreases in the budget was $286,516.87. Our increases were 601, 816.22, which gives us a $315,299.35 increase. And then you build the contingency fund back in to $67,000. So our total increases to operation, the 286. We went up 601. The balance was 315. The contingency fund I talked about with you guys already, but we budgeted and why we budgeted that. The statutory expenditures, that number will change. This number will change. It'll probably end up, that number showing on, reflected on the sheet will probably end up being about $38,000.
That's the Social Security.
That's the Social Security.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm raising my hand.
Uh-huh.
I'm raising my hand. So other operations excluded from CAP. We talked about that's the Hackensack Paramus. You've got the library that's going up, the $24,902. The BCUA going up $80,430. Recycling tax and the library under the utilities is going up another $5,167.04. So your total operations excluded from CAP. Your total decreases is $2,500. Total increases is $128,264.91. Your net impact is $125,64.91. Your deferred charges from CAP, and this, like I said, we'll probably cover the majority of this in capital, but you've got your capital improvement fund going up by $345,900. You've got your debt service going down by $345,900. And your other deferred charges, you went down $162,928. You went up $77,591.65. So your overall is your $85,337.43. Your total deferred charges, $508,829.08. Minus $423,491.65 gives you your $85,337.43. Total increase in general appropriations as we stand before Social Security, which Social Security does not have a increase on the net tax rate because other items will be adjusted, but you're at $421,943.80 without an amount. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
If there was no net increase or decrease to an item, it did not appear on here. I'm asking because we have a shared service agreement with the county for employee assistance program. I think it's a 5-year contract. If there's been no change in that, that's why it's not on here. Okay. The other
and also, if it's been broken out, my understanding is that it has been broken. If you go into the operating budget, under the tab, you should see it there.
Okay. The other thing is, I may have this wrong, but is there a new commuter tax effective March 1st that's going to be a statutory requirement? I thought I heard that as of March 1st, there's a new commuter tax.
I'm not aware.
Okay, just through my professional, I've heard this, so I don't know if it's a new statutory requirement. Like it comes in and goes out, it's like a GTL type thing, but do we have an obligation to pay that to the state?
On like the payroll tax?
Yeah.
Okay. Generally, our payroll company sends us memos.
Yeah, we just got some kind of a notice, so I'm just curious.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions? Questions?
Does anyone need a 5-minute break before we continue? Are we okay with that, Ray?
Yes, sir.
All right, 5 minutes break. There are some beautiful bagels and coffee. Thank you, Raymond, for bringing that in.
Councilman Kaufman, what are the bagels?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Kaufman, for bagels.
I don't have using my, I'm following up on the
Oh, sure. Yeah, there was no way we were going to make that. We were going to have to hire someone to write the grant. That was good silence.
Okay, so the number one question is, how much longer? How much longer, right? And where are we getting the money? So here's how I envision the rest of the today going. I want to let you all know that I've ordered in lunch, subs for everybody. Dinner is Italian, sorry, with cappuccino and espresso and cannoli.
Nice.
I told my wife probably 10:30ish I would be home. Don't wait up. What's up?
What's the wine?
Dealer's choice, whatever you want. No, really guys, as I see it, I've got revenue to cover, which is probably no more than 10-15 minutes. I'm going to get into capital and to explain capital to you all, to touch on it. We had about $3.5 million worth of requests, all of them worthy, quite frankly, in my opinion. For the talking point, I've kind of narrowed it down to about $1.8 million. We'll talk a little bit about debt service as well, too. Again, whatever you guys want in and out of capital, I'll give you my rationale behind it. Ultimately, your decision. I think really we're in for another hour. And then the thought process is, these big books, you're all going to bring home. You're going to put underneath your pillow. And for osmosis, you're going to come back, and next week be able to tell me everything, everything in the budget. No, but really take during the week to go ahead, look through the binder, look through any questions that you have. There may be something that translates over the week that I may need to go in and edit and send out to you guys. And then next Saturday really is your show. It is any questions that you may have, what was my thought process behind A, B, C, and D. Hopefully, there'll only be very few, hopefully. If there is a ton, that's fine too. I'm here for the day. I'm here for as long as it takes for you guys to feel comfortable with this budget. I have in the email that I sent out to all of you, I've given you my personal cell phone number. If you want to get together during the week and you have a question and say, look, I'm looking at insurance because I really don't get asked. Can I come in and talk to you? I'd love for you to be able to do that. Please feel free to come in and see me, talk to me, and of course that conversation extends to anybody on council, obviously. Whether you have questions, you want to email me, you want to send information, send your questions to me. I'm here throughout the course of the week. Saturday we can go ahead and go through the process, we can answer your questions. Then we can get to introducing, then council can give me direction of whether they would like to go forward and have me put together a finalized budget for council to vote on. That's kind of how I see things playing out. Questions, comments, concerns? No? Go. Okay. Revenues. So, let's talk about revenues in general. Okay, I look at surplus, and everybody has a different philosophy when it comes to revenue and when it comes to surplus. I will tell you up front, I am more of the conservative individual when it comes to surplus. I view surplus as A, the rainy day fund, B, I view surplus that it is used to spoon feed tax increases. I do not subscribe to taking huge chunks of surplus all at one time. It's not my thought process. And again, I go back to keeping things level, right? Keeping things level. We want a little increase each year, not the yo-yo budgeting of we're up this, we're down this, we're up this, we're down this. So I try to keep it overall pretty low, the utilization. Again, that's ultimately up to your decision of how you want to utilize that surplus. If you tell me you want to utilize more surplus in the budget, that's your thought process, or your decision. Here, before I get into just the numbers, when I took a look at surplus, here are some of the things in the back of my mind. I know that I still got 2 pending contracts that are out there. What I know for a fact is those contracts are not going to be as favorable as what the past contracts have been before in the past. They're not. And this is something that we've discussed, Council and I have discussed putting in there. So you know that there are going to be increases associated. Myself and your team will try to keep those contracts to the most reasonable amount possible. But we do know that there are going to be some impacts, number one. Number two, you know that you are going to, well, the thought process is that you're going to build a community center. There are going to be costs associated with that. Let's an open conversation about that. I do think there are ways to mitigate those costs through revenues that you bring in order to go ahead and have a community center, rentals for parties and things of that nature. But it is going to be a cost into the budget. So I kind of take a look at forecasting that in my mind of where those items are going to be. One of your big revenues that you brought in this year was your interest on investments. We know in this day and age, you turn on the news, who knows where interest is going to be on investments. I hope a couple months from now, we're talking about having a different conversation than where we are at today. We're talking about some rate cuts as well too.
Thank you.
So I keep that in the back of my mind. Utilizing surplus, anticipating revenues at the end of the day, I think anyone sitting in front of the room here that says they have the magic answer to that my answer is right, or they have the answer of what level it should be done, what it shouldn't be done, pull them alive. Because it's really what ultimately you as a governing body, you as a group feel comfortable with. Rule of thumb. This town has deferred school tax. I have to tell you, this is one of my least favorite conversations, is talking about deferred school tax. And quite frankly, any questions regarding deferred school tax, I'm going to give to Chris, because he is more of an expert at it than I am, raising my hand. General rule of thumb of surplus. I don't spend more than I bring in. Sounds like a pretty simple concept. If I generated $1 million in surplus that I have available to me, the goal should be I don't spend more than $1 million in that year. That's my thought when it comes to utilizing surplus. There are some years, some unique circumstances, that you're going to borrow some surplus from your bank, and you may spend more than what you generated. Personally, I try to keep it at, or I recommend to the governing body and to you, don't spend more than you bring in. It's kind of how you run a household.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I try to equate it to. So, big fancy chart that lists all of your revenues from 2014 to 2019 of where you're at. And you can go ahead and take a look at all of those. Getting to the meat and potatoes. Last year, there were funds available to us this year for utilization surplus. Again, using my philosophy, you got 1.56 available to you, 1,500,000. Overall, your surplus is 5.6 million, correct? Correct. Overall, with your deferred school tax. 6.5 million. Last year, you utilized, you have available to you this year, 1.5 million. One of the reasons that I'm hesitant of anticipating a higher use of surplus is because when you go back for years, if you look at your surplus, 425, 425, 425, 425, then you doubled it. 839, 970, and then last year was 975. So you doubled your utilization of surplus. And again, I'm not saying that's a right thing or a wrong thing. That's the council decision of what they wanted to go ahead and utilize. I'd like to go ahead and keep that surplus and use it gingerly. Questions on overall surplus on this sheet? Any questions on philosophy? Currently, right now, the way that the budget stands, and what I will tell you, that go back to that $40,000 that we have to make up for Social Security. Chris and I are going to put our heads together, but one of the items that we may end up doing, at least from our end, not what you ultimately end up doing, but at least from our end, is we may bump that 975 up to 980. And there's some other, I'd rather take little pieces here and there, either increase little pieces from increasing revenue or decreasing expenditures to make up that $40,000 to get you to the same tax rate of where you're at today.
We're currently carrying the surplus of 6.5 million, and that includes the deferred school tax, right?
Correct.
What is the municipal surplus? I can't find that on the, I'm jumping out of it.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't get segregated that way. If you look at it in analysis of your deferred school tax, and I'm not going to dive too deep into the rabbit hole unless you have specific questions. But the deferred school tax is basically the ability to defer 1/2 of the amount that you owe to the school. The reason for that is because the school operates on the fiscal year, we operate on the calendar year. So you go back to the beginning of time, we started on January 1st, there was a 6-month delay before the school started. So in that calendar year, we only owed 6 months of the school taxes. The rest of the amount due on their levy would have been deferred into the following year. And that carries over in perpetuity unless the school shuts down and you now have that liability that you need to pay back. What that means is that the amount that we are deferring in school tax is actually half of the entire school tax levy. So at this time, you're about $16.3 million in deferred school taxes over the course of history. Now, that increases year over year by half of the amount that the school tax increases. So this year, in 2020, the school adopts their budget and the school tax goes up by $1,000 or $1 million. We're able to defer $500,000 of that into the following year. So the breakdown of municipal surplus or deferred school tax surplus is not, I mean, we can make it up on our side, in which case we would take the $6.5 million in aggregate and subtract out the $16.3 million, and there's your municipal portion of the fund balance. We would never really look at it that way because obviously that would be an $11 million deficit in fund balance, which is not actually what it is. What the deferred school tax is doing is basically saying, well, you have the option to pay the school ahead of time and let them handle the money the way they see fit, or the town can hold on to it and handle the money the way we see fit. And it's basically just a cash flow situation where who's more responsible with the funds? Is it the municipality or the school?
You don't want to go down that route.
You don't want to go down that rabbit hole. This is a philosophical question as well, right? I mean, on the municipal side, you have a team of employees that have professional licenses. On the school side, there's no requirement for a professional license, so that would be, one advantage on the municipal side. On the school side, they're going to argue that it's their money and they want it, or that they should be custodian of it. Again, philosophical battle. There's no right or wrong answer. That's just, the fact of the matter. So we do have the deferred school tax. It is optional. You can opt out of deferring it. I don't recommend doing that, just because, you're already in a situation where you have the deferred school tax established, and there's really no benefit to you to stop doing it. So the amount that you see up there, that Ray is using, the 1.528, he's taking, so if you look at, we have an annual financial statement. If you were to look at the annual financial statement, the result of our operations for 2019 was about 1.8 million. Of that 1.8 million, about 300,000 of it was the deferred school tax. So if we subtracted that out, that we're not counting the deferred school tax in the amount that we are replenishing year over year, just so that you're not utilizing the deferred school tax in support of the budget. That can't make up for the last however many years the borough has had a deferred school tax.
Okay, so basically we have about $1.5 million that is using this chart. We have about $1.5 million that's considered surplus to us.
Using this chart, operating under the assumption that you were at zero last year, which isn't the case, right? Because it carries over forever. But yes, that 1.5 would have been the amount that in 2019, the result of operations, not including anything for the deferred school tax.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for those municipalities that have a deferred school tax, I've included into this sheet because I had a feeling that it was going to come up. Again, I've tried to wean councils off of even talking about the deferred school tax. Here's my result of operations. Whether it's my budgeted, my dollars that have lapsed from my previous year's budget, or revenues that I've been able to collect, and look at this component and stay away from the deferred school tax. And use that as kind of the guideline of where you are. That's my thought process. It is totally legal to go ahead and utilize, again, all of the numbers that we have here and that we provide. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a train of thought or thought process. Okay. So, where are we at? We are surplusing anticipated. I left flat for this year. It's a 975. We mentioned before, it may increase that a little bit. Our revenues, our local revenues, again, is left flat. The dedicated construction are left flat. It's basically all along here, all your revenues in here are left flat as of now. The total miscellaneous revenues is $1,989,580. Your overall, let me see where I'm at. Your receipt for delinquent taxes, you're able to go ahead and realize some additional dollars for your receipt from delinquent taxes. We factored that into the budget. We haven't maximized that, right, Chris?
No, we do still have a little bit.
We have a little bit of room there? Okay. Your miscellaneous revenues, you're up, your $14,000. So overall, in your subtotal of additional revenues, you're up by $65,000.
Why is the delinquent tax going up?
It's a product of the amount that you collected in the previous year.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a balance sheet item, so it really depends on where your tax collections land on your delinquent taxes in the previous year.
It's a more realistic
It's
number
trailing.
for what actual numbers are, in other words.
Exactly. If you look at, there's a sheet in the annual financial statements that runs through all of your tax revenue, and then it applies a percentage to the amount that you collected. And so the amount that you're allowed to actually anticipate is a percentage of the total collection, and that'll change year over year, strictly based on the balance sheet, no other control that we have over it, really.
Because you're talking about the RUT, correct?
No, this is the receipts and delinquent taxes. The RUT is similar, also a balance sheet item that you have to plug in based on collections of the previous year. But this one is specific to the delinquent taxes. The RUT is based on the current year projected collection rate.
Okay, great.
That 285,000 is actually collected, or is that anticipated?
The $285,000 is what we're anticipating collecting from our delinquent taxes. We're allowed to go up to $301,000. That would be the maximum. And that $301,000 is 69.8% of the total cash receipts on delinquent taxes that we received in 2019. So it's a balance sheet calculation. I can make the delinquent tax sheet available for everybody to look at. It's not necessary. And it was similar to, that'll be the case every year.
Your minimum, so your total amount to be raised by taxes for the municipal budget is $13,186,529.42. Your minimum library tax, you had asked the question about what the mill and what that number was, $642,638.10. So in total revenues, you have $13,829,167.32.
I'm sorry, can I go back to the delinquent tax rate, that's the 285 again? Has that been analyzed to look at, because some of that money is never going to be collected. I mean, it's on property that is not, it's taxable, but it's not collectible. Has that been looked into?
So it will always be, it will almost always be collectible, and here's why. Every municipality has a tax sale. So the tax collector is charged with the duty of collecting all the taxes one way or another. And it's, one is three things that's going to happen. So you have one is the property owner, where somebody on behalf of the property owner is going to pay. Two, it's going to go to sale, and a private owner is going to buy it, right? So the private owner is going to pay the taxes, and then the property owner has, if they want to take away the lien, they can either pay it off, or the private owner is going to foreclose on the property, or third, it gets struck off to the municipality, and that means that the municipality now owns the lien, and they have the option to foreclose the same way that the private owner would have the option to foreclose. Whether they do or not is a different discussion, but ultimately it's always collectible unless you get to that third option, you opt not to foreclose, then it sits on the balance sheet until you make a decision on how you want to handle the property.
It sits on the balance sheet forever.
Until we make a decision on how you want to handle the property, right? So
One other note I would just like to add, any kind of tax lien always takes first position lien. You could have 10 mortgages on the property from 50 years ago, the tax lien takes first position.
Yeah, so you will collect it eventually one way or another, unless you end up with it being struck off to the municipality, in which case you have to make a decision on whether you want to proceed with foreclosure proceedings or if you're just going to let it sit on the balance sheet and accrue over time. So it's not that it needs to be analyzed so much as it's just part of the life cycle of the tax collection. So what happens is it doesn't get sold in the year that it's due, unless you have an accelerated sale, which we do not here. So if the 2019 taxes were not paid in 2019, at some time in 2020, the tax collector mandatory has to have a tax sale on the 2019 property. Nothing in 2020 gets sold, no subsequent taxes get sold on the property, but anything prior to December 31st, 2019, before we get sold. So we will collect it in the form of a tax.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is the detail on the revenue sheet. Again, going back to the 975 is left flat, and then miscellaneous revenue. I bumped up court a little bit. They collected 151,515. We anticipated 90,019. We bumped that up $10,000. Interest on investments or interest on investment deposits. We collected 191. We anticipated 130, I bumped that up to 135. So you can see the increases of anticipating additional revenues. I've done really a conservative approach on that.
Can you just remind me, what's the maturity on all those investments?
So on our investments, they're completely liquid. There's no maturity.
So like 3 months?
There's no timeline. We can pull it out anytime.
I'm just more asking because we've seen this huge drop in treasuries this week.
Yeah, so our any idle cash is sitting either in our checking accounts, which are interest-bearing checking accounts.
Okay.
Or we have the state offers the New Jersey Cash Management Fund, which you get slightly better rates for. But you know, I submit a request to pull the money out. I get it the next day. It's a no risk benefit. Municipalities can't invest in anything that's risky. So while we might see lower interest rates, things lock in. We're going to be affected by the lower interest rates immediately.
Right. Okay.
State aid, which is an energy receipt tax, it's been flat for years and years and years. We all know that. The Garden State Preservation Trust is flat. Uniform construction is flat. Miscellaneous, you asked about the one of the interlocals, but the county, that's flat. The grant funds, again, I left all of that in there. We've got to, our grant funds with offsetting appropriations, that will be updated before introduction of budget, but like I said, they have an expenditure, they have it as a revenue and as an expenditure. Miscellaneous revenue section, again, we've left all of that, all of those items flat. So at the end of the day, we are utilizing, what is it, about $65,000 in additional revenue. After this year's budget. $65,124. Questions?
Okay, I think miscellaneous revenue, there's a section called fines and costs, and there's nothing budgeted. What's that title? Is it fines and costs meaning cops writing tickets? Is it? We're doing a bad job if that's the case.
No, the fines and costs, not every municipality has that. Municipal court is where all the ticket revenue runs through court. So it's just been a blank item. It's the reason that it's on this list at all is because it's a standard item on the budget document. The court revenue goes, if you write a ticket today, if it's, if it's in the court, whether the person appears, I mean, it's going to be a pretty big delay there, but it all runs through the court. The court sends a check each month. So that's the final.
But just going over your report, in past years, just so you guys know, these guys, most of them have been with, I've been here with most of them as long as they've been here. We have seen bids in that, right, that needed to be addressed to the appropriate person about why court costs and fees all of a sudden went down immensely. Because it's a revenue generator, right? Let's be honest.
So let me give you the answer to that. No. What you are logically thinking of is correct. However, I would tell you, as being the BA, that there would never be a conversation publicly with anyone about generating fees associated that go into the court. It's not allowed.
Right.
I think there can be an exploratory conversation regarding, hey, can you explain to me why we're seeing a dip in fees? Because, not that we're counting on this money, because that, we're not allowed to do that. But could it be that we now have to take our police detail and move them over to more X than Y?
Right.
Could it be that we have 2 or 3 officers perhaps that are out and we're running on skeleton shifts? I think looking at that from an analytical perspective, I think is a thing that we certainly can do and we will continue to do. But the state makes it very clear that as a municipality, that you cannot have things of quotas and things of that type of nature. And I'm sure that's not what you were saying, but
No, not at all.
I always want to
You know,
Right.
exactly what you said.
Yeah.
You say like, okay, where,
Right, well, any reason, we're noticing, for this monthly, there seems to be an issue, or year over year, let's take a look at that. And that's something that we will go ahead and continue to do. And the interesting part, or kind of the fun part, at least for me, with dealing with the municipal budget, is there's so many moving parts, right? And it's at the end of the day, to make the end product is, I tweak this, I adjust this, I move this here, I bump this up a little bit here, it's actually, kind of get excited about it, I like it. It's kind of a fun part of budget, it's a fun part of government. When I did my interview here, the council will tell you, this tells the story. This tells what your priorities are. This is the document that guides us and the professional staff of what you want done. So I kind of get into this, so I digress a little bit. But any other questions on revenues? All right, we good? You need a minute break before we switch into capital? Anybody? You certainly may. Yeah, he's right over there.
No. So in that space where we have, I guess, second bonuses and whatnot, there's an empty spot there. Is there something coming in soon that will help? Some taxes or revenue or something? Because I know that there's rumors of some stuff coming in. I don't know how that is actually in the budget or it's going to be resolved.
So
Is this a vacant storefront, or is this a buildable lot?
I guess, go ahead.
So let me answer saying by this. A piece of land has a value, okay? And that's assessed. If I go straight here, Chris, please correct me. A piece of land has a value to it. A piece of land with a store and a viable business operating out of it has a value. If the value was X with the store and the land at this point in time, and now they change it to something else, bigger, there's wider, taller, whatever, that has a different value. An empty building with the land and the building on it, we still get our taxes. The landlord doesn't get the rent, but we get what is assessed on. Knocks it down and says, you know what, I want to do something new down the road. I don't want to pay on the house, and I don't want to pay on the building. Knocks the building down, his assessment drops. Because then it's just a land value. But now, goes ahead and rebuilds 3 times the size. I'm suggesting it to anyone who wants to. 3 times the size, that value now has gone up, generates more taxes for us, increases our net valuation. So simply by a store's empty and now Dunkin' Donuts moves in, doesn't give us any more money. Correct?
Correct. And also, I mean, when it increases the net valuation, it increases the net valuation on the commercial side and skews the overall property tax over to the commercial a little bit more than it does to the residents, which is always an advantage as well.
Thank you. in the capital section now of your book, guys. I believe that was back in the beginning. On the first page of the budget book. Yep, first page. You all there? Past couple of years, 1,525,180 is what we did in capital, at least authorized. Right now we have a band that we did last year.
Raymond, would you explain to the budget committee what BAN stands for?
Bond anticipated note. A bond anticipated note. It's basically like having a credit card, and you're only paying interest on it for X amount of years until you ultimately either now start making interest and principal payment, or you capitalize it, meaning you put it into long-term debt, as you would do with a bond. This year, we have a bond. You've gone ahead and you have X amount of dollars that have been either temporary financed or financed through cash, and we need to now go ahead and wrap that up into long-term financing. On the plus side, it looks like ultimately it will be some good timing for us to go ahead and do this bond, at least from an interest rate perspective. Right now, Chris, what do we have that we're looking to move?
So, the overall balance of your deferred taxes that have not been fully funded yet, and when I say fully funded, that means serial bonds have been sold. Because when you adopt an ordinance, you've got a portion of it that's funded, a very small portion of it that's funded, and you've got the overwhelming balance is an unfunded portion. Now, until you actually need the cash to pay for the project, you don't want to borrow the money because you're paying interest on debt that you don't need. So, the overall balance in our unfunded portion is about $6.5 million. Now, some of that we're expecting grants are going to come in. Some of that we sold notes for, which are bond anticipation notes. And the others are just open authorizations pending completion or beginning of a project. The way that we spoke about selling bonds this year, we were looking at about $4.5 million in bonds. That may or may not change based on if we see that interest rates are falling. We may want to take advantage of this. Again, is a philosophical question where you will take a budget hit because you'll have to pay principal payments on money that you would have otherwise maybe only been paying interest on for the next couple of years. And this will have to go. We'll have to go through the entire debt analysis in order to determine when the best time for these principal payments to hit the budget would be. But you're doing that at interest rate risk, right? You're risking that by delaying this 2 or 3 years. Interest rates go up, and you're paying more over the lifetime of the bond than you would have otherwise been paying if you were to take advantage of the low interest rates today. So one of the discussion items is, what do we reasonably foresee spending money on in the next couple of years? Projects that we know we definitely want to move forward with, and then there's this conversation about whether or not we want to permanently finance those projects up front. Right now, it's very interesting. You haven't dealt with this in the last 10 years or so, but you're actually borrowing money for less than you're investing it for. So we have arbitrage issues. We would have to deal with the bond counsels on that, and potentially the financial advisors to make sure that we're not violating any of the arbitrage rules for municipalities. That's something that in my career I haven't had to deal with yet. Something is relatively new for me. So it is a really good time to borrow money. All of the municipalities that I'm working with are refinancing their debt and taking advantage of these long-term, very low interest payments. So that kind of something to keep in the back of your head as we are going through the entire capital project, the analysis, when we present to you $3.5 million, but 1.8 is what you're looking at doing this year. That was based on a, not a little bit more sophisticated than back of the envelope math, but to keep the budget flat. But that does not necessarily mean that it's going to be the most advantageous on a 20-year horizon as far as locking in low interest rates.
So Chris, I'm sorry, Chris, do you feel that we should be looking into refinancing our existing debt?
So if there's rules around when you can and can't refinance existing debt, it has to be callable. We haven't had that opportunity here. That's something that if the ability was there, I would have presented that to you and made a proposal. The rules, at a really high level, you have to have a 3.5% net savings on the debt. It has to be callable. If it's not callable and you're advance refunding it, it becomes a taxable bond instead of non-taxable like municipalities normally are. So a lot goes into it, but the bottom line is that we don't have the option right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
May
Thank you.
I ask, when do you think that might be possible? Next year, 2 years, 3 years?
I would have to check your specific the official statement on the bond itself. The only bond, so you've got only a couple that are open. The last two that you sold, 2013 and 2017, are at interest rates that are 2.5% and below, 2.5% below.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see the 3.5% savings.
Right.
The one from 2007 is at 4%, but you only have 2 years left on it, so you're not going to really have the opportunity for your existing debt today. I don't know, did I address the question or
That really wasn't my question.
No, you did, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
you're wrong?
So going back to, we have a whole bunch of worthwhile projects, and the back of the napkin that Chris had referred to goes back to that keeping things level, right? The goal is to try to keep things level, not only in the budget, but in the tax rate as well too. I go back to open space. Open space, for the past several years, we have done, taken a tremendous amount of money out of open space and used it for maintenance. So legal, like frankly, we say it's legal charge, it can be done. It depends upon where your municipality is with your parks, what stage of, what stage of life. And let me explain to you what I mean. If you have brand new parks, they've all been upgraded, they're where they should be, they're all ADA compliant, all the residents are happy, right? You're now in a maintenance mode. Now, you go ahead and you take a look and you say, okay, I can utilize these funds to maintain what I've built. That's not where you're at. You've got issues or concerns, at least from what I've been told, the majority of your parks. You've got, I always get the initials wrong, KBG, sorry, I always blow that. That a ton of work needs to be done there. We're working on finding homes for girls. We've got some playgrounds that need to be updated. And quite frankly, you hired with T&M a couple of years ago that put together a $4 million plan. So you're not in a maintenance mode, you're in a redevelopment mode. Question becomes, if, and I'm not saying necessarily I want anyone to say that this is my perspective, what gets redeveloped, how it gets redeveloped, what the timing of it is, and that's ultimately a council, that's ultimately your, as an elected body, to decide. But in trying to forecast that, you know you're definitely not in a maintenance mode, so how do you go ahead, and at least I know 3 or 4 topics that council has already explained to me that are priority for them, that they want to address. how do we maximize our opportunities to go ahead and get those projects done? And one of them, as I mentioned, is through the county open space. So gone ahead, and I mentioned before, I've taken some of the maintenance items, I've moved them back into operating, and now you have the ability to maximize your grant with the county. And we know for the next 2 or 3 years, we've got a lot of recreation stuff that we want to accomplish. So here's where we stand today. You had $266,000 into the Open Space Trust Fund. In 2019, you certified, or $83,000 was certified for the 2019 Kids Grant application. You have $37,000 for the 18 application. You have $60,390 for the 17 application. These are all part of your matches. Some of them tie into the same project. From that point in time, so I have a starting balance. I now do, and just to take this one step further, the open space trust accounts, none of them are kept on. They're kept on an Excel spreadsheet. They're all now onto Edmunds, which is a plus. Because guys like me call downstairs and are saying, "What's our balance?" And then I got to get out the book and the calculator and the tape and this and that. So it was frustrating for me a little bit because I kind of walked into some situations that we had to make some decisions on fairly quickly. But the point being is now we have a better system put in place on how we can go ahead and account for these items. Anybody that, any dollars that have previously been allocated to either an organization or to a department, those funds have been re-encumbered again. So for example, you had Shade Tree that had $27,000, DPW had $25,000, the Green Team had $2,120, Beautification at $5,700, and then there was an encumbrance in there for batting cages. Actually, there's no encumbrance. We put an encumbrance in for the Edmund system. One for batting cages. There was a $3,000 encumbrance and a $7,000 encumbrance, and that's for the batting cages over at Roosevelt. So when you go in and you take all of that, it basically brings you down to about $23,000. We've got our new set of revenue that's coming in this year is $145,000 roughly. So at the end of the day, when you go ahead, we're going to use the 145 we'll make available for our 2020 applications for the freeholders. So if they match us, you end up with a $300,000 project, $145,000. It's kind of free money. It's one of the reasons that I made a big push to do what we did with the operating budget. As I mentioned, anybody that was receiving money previously to the open space has either been accounted for either in other funds, had enough money left over in there, or have been put into the operating budget. Questions on open space? Okay. PPF. There was a lot of debate about PPF, I guess a couple of years ago. And quite frankly, there's an overall debate about organizations and what the organizations pay for, what they don't pay for, what the expectation is. And I think that there's an opportunity, and I call it an opportunity for us to have some healthy conversations with our organizations and say, if you have these expectations, it's going to cost Y, how are we going to get there? And the PPF fund is one of the things that we could take a look at, certainly, as a council of, is that the right dollar amount of the $10 per minute? Is that the right dollar amount of where it should be at? I don't know. I guess this was established 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Do we want to do a better seeding application, fertilization application, the dugouts, and this and that? There's a lot of things that cost money that we're being asked to have done, and we need to really have some discussions of how we get there. But right now, in the PPF fund, we started out with a balance of about $80,000. There was $53,000 that was utilized as the match for the 19 application. Generally speaking, on revenues, 2019 we brought in $16,350. In 18 we brought in $12,300, and in 17 we brought in $11,400. On an average, I did it at 13,330. Average of 3 years. Some years higher, some years less, depends upon how things go. Field maintenance, this is where we're bringing a company in to go ahead and to do some improvements to our fields. This is a whole nother larger conversation. We'll take place more down the road after the budget, but really is how we getting our most bang for our buck there, whether it's employees, like outsourcing or employees. Sometimes you'll hear me talk about, I absolutely think this should be outsourced. Sometimes there are opportunities from a financial perspective that make sense to bring it back. You just have to do the analysis. So these were some of the requests that I received from Recreation in that 54 item sheet. Sorry. So this year I've allocated field maintenance 2,600 to the PPF. There's some doggy waste containers, cigarette waste containers, the lightning detection system, and all of the bathrooms, from what Carolyn tells me, the dryers, toilet paper, soap, dispensers, things of that nature are just probably 100 years old and need to be done. From a budgeting perspective, and I take my BA hat off just for a second, one of the things that I used to have in my department was, in my operating budget, was a minor capital account that I could charge items off to that. It's something that, depending upon the tax rate, that we may want to consider moving forward. Not for this year, but moving forward. Okay. This is
This is funds that we're getting at basically at grants or matching, or money that we collect from separately. It's not part of the capital program per se, right?
the voters in River Edge passed a
Yeah, 1 cent.
one cent on every 100, and that generates $145,000.
Okay. But that's not this year.
That's this income here.
Some of the items that you have on there that you're suggesting be put into this have to be spent this year, correct?
No. Some of the items in the open space, when you say, ask that question again.
Some of the items that are in here have to be spent this year out of that money. Because what I'm looking at is like some of these items, in my mind, need to say capital. It should be deferred into the capital budget. And because there seem to be items that have a lifespan of over 5 years. Are we mixing and matching here, or am I just not getting?
What you're, for open space, not the PPF, for open space, you're saying, okay, these items right here have already been certified. These funds are already certified and encumbered and out of the way. So it's done already. This was one of the ones too that has been certified, the barricades, done. That's already been certified, those dollars have already been allocated based from you guys, with your resolutions that everybody would come in, you would say, we have X amount of dollars, everybody would put their requests in, and this is one of the requests that councils have previously given. So that's out of the picture. They're in open space.
Maybe I'm not getting this again, but the council has encumbered money that they haven't collected yet?
There's balances from previous open space tax, right? So every year, you collect $146,000, but if you don't spend it, it carries over. It's a chunk of account.
Right. So we started out here. These are the expenditures of where we're at. This is where we're looking to go in the future. 145. So rather than having these additional expenditures, although these kind of the smaller expenditures here, you're going to dedicate the bulk of the dollars towards your match, which is actually what some of these items are. And yes, the answer to your question, you could capitalize that as well too. You could now if you had and again, this is what I'm accustomed to. I had an open space trust fund that was, that did not have a sunset on it. So I would go ahead and I would bond a project for $300,000, and then I would take the revenue that I was collecting from open space and go to pay the bond. And that's a conversation for council to have down the road if you have an open space trust fund that doesn't have a sunset clause on it. So you would leave.
Oh, it does, right?
Yours does.
It has a 5-year
5 years.
public ratification. Okay. So that option is out off the table. So-
Yeah. I mean, I only hesitate because, you could take, I'm gonna say yeah. I'm gonna generally say yes.
Okay, I don't want to get too deep into this. My question really here is, are we better off financially doing this? Or are we better off looking at this and saying, let's capitalize some of it and put it into the capital fund? And I don't need an answer to that. That's basically a rhetorical question for you and the council to think about.
So,
It's not, I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know if you can give me the answer to that right now.
Yeah, it's again one of those situations where,
And I don't know if it's worth it.
do you want to pay in full in cash, which of the funds that you've already collected, or do you want to borrow money to pay it over time, right? So it's, and then alternatively, what are you going to use the open space trust fund for at that point? If you're not going to be, if you're going to be deferring everything into capital, they can, some agreements that you would be able to push it into capital, but, then it's a broader conversation about the open space tax, in general, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely food for thought.
and we have done some of that as we get into the capital. We've done some items, kind of the smorgasbord a little bit all over the place. If you had, one of the things that we're going to take a look at moving forward with is really establishing a 5-year plan, saying whether it's not only from open space, but police, public works, building and grounds, recreation. And then it really gets to a number of where council is happy with, of what each year that dollar amount should be. And if there is enough room in there consistently, to put some of the rec projects in there as well too, that's an opportunity for us. I'll give you my personal opinion on that topic. Generally speaking, I've always been in favor of bonding projects, recreation projects, through a capital bond. Whether it is repaid through the open space trust fund or as part of the debt service, that's how we repay it. Again, that's my feeling as a director of Parks and Recreation, not necessarily as your BA. My argument back then was, if I'm building a park and it's going to last 50 years, or 30 years, or whatever now, and you amateurize that out, the generation of today, that cost should only be poured on the generation of today. It should, families that are going to come in and enjoy it for the next 15, 20 years should also have some skin in the game of that.
Yeah, that's a strategic.
But that's a philosophy.
Yeah.
I really wish I could make this bigger. No, I did that. You really can't, you lose clarity. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Is that better? Yeah? Yeah? Yes? No? Yeah. So how we looked at it this year? Last year, 2019, you had 106,000. 106,719 you adopted in your capital improvement fund. This year, there was 5% allocated at an estimated at a $1,865,000 bond. And again, these numbers aren't finalized. Please understand that, because Some costs have to be added in, things in, out, but just, again, as I said, it gives you a framework to go ahead.
Raymond, would you just explain to the budget committee what a soft cost would be?
Soft costs, engineering, bond fees, police can go in there as well too, what else am I missing?
It's
Debt service.
everything that's non-construction. Non-construction and non-acquisition. Everything associated with preparing for the project.
Okay. So there's your 5%, and then I have a little money allocated in there, an additional $7,000, which gives you the bonding capability, or borrowing capability of another $144,000. So in case something else comes up throughout the year, you have the 5% for your capital down payment. And I have one capital item in there for $6,292, which is door replacement for Memorial Fund. This is something that you guys used to do in the past, and actually I very much agree with. To your point, is some of the items you do a combination of borrowing, some of them straight out cash. I think it's a good idea. Again, that's the whole philosophy back to debt and what you want to pay cash and whatever, but I think doing a hybrid is a good thing. Okay. So setting it up this way, you basically have flush, right? Now, we get into our debt service. We have a drop coming off in our debt service of $345,000. Ultimately, $345,000. We have a payment that drops off. The payment on bond and principal comes down. Our interest on bonds comes down. We have a loan trust payment that drops off, and then we put back on the books the interest on notes. So at the end of the day, we've got like $349,000 that comes down off the books. So as I mentioned to you guys before, keeping it level, right? You could go ahead and reduce that entire amount within your budget. And you have 1 year, you'd be great. And week one would be singing your praise. The next year, when we go ahead and we go to do those bonds, like doing this year, which come on for the books next year, and depending upon interest rate, ultimately, if you leave that money funded in the budget, your bond payment will be pretty close to, again, the disclosure depending upon interest rates and everything, of what you currently have allocated. So it keeps it flat. You won't be able to charge as many things off to these kind of things. You won't be able to charge off to it, but you'll have a bond payment that's now you won't have to raise a whole bunch more in taxes. Okay. So, do you want me to go through each one of these items? I mean, there's a list of 10 or 12 different items that have been submitted. That total up, that you ultimately, your net increase ends up being 1,632,219, 1,632,219. So you end up as an increase at a zero. So there's, like I said, a list of items in there that are expenditures, would be increases, your debt service, drops, and then end up with
Just procedurally, so everybody's aware, you're budgeting this money into a capital improvement fund. You cannot spend it until we adopt an ordinance actually appropriating it for these projects. So you're, by setting this money aside and budgeting it in the capital improvement fund, you're not stuck with these projects. You can make that decision when you adopt the ordinance.
And one.
I just wanted to also mention there were other requests for capital that we didn't put into the budget, right?
Well, yeah, this is the capital improvement program. This is into the budget itself. The other requests, which we'll go over in a minute on those other spreadsheets, didn't make the cut anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't make the cut anywhere.
And to clarify also, these are the projects that we're paying for in cash versus the other one with a list of all the projects are going to be authorizing debt for.
Does the budget committee understand what we're talking about here? Do you guys understand what we're doing? In other words, getting a windfall because we're dropping off a bond. And instead of just letting that one-time windfall occur and create havoc in later years' bonds, we're actually spending that money on things we could bond and not bonding them. So it's a sale for us in a way. It's like a coupon that we're using.
We're also getting very good interest rates right now.
Yeah.
It's an improvement.
So really just kind of going to the next chapter of what we're doing, if you want to look at it, that we have 50 or 60 requests, of which 10 of those requests are being funded through here. 40 of those, or 35 of those are being funded through the capital budget. 5 of them are being funded from the PPL. And another 5 or 6 of them, while worthy projects, didn't make the cut. And that's, I guess, the simplest way.
Yeah, so we're being super responsible, and it's working out really good for us.
Can I just say, so it was the finance committee that determined those 5 or 6 things didn't make the budget, didn't make the cut? I just, because I don't know what those 5 or 6
It was
things
based
are.
on Ray's,
Okay.
yeah, it was based on Raymond's recommendation.
Let Raymond
I just
finish,
think we
because
should
it's
have
a great
that
question.
conversation.
And I'm going to go through each of them. So basically, how we started this project is to say, okay, you got $3.5 million worth of requests that are coming. We know that we want the number, or at least that's what's been conveyed, we want to be relatively the average of what we've done before in the town. So that gives you that 1.8-ish, between 1.7 and 1.9-ish. So kind of went through and said, okay, how do we approach this that I can give at least a starting point of, hey, here's 1.8. If you want to go up higher, we'll go up higher. If you want to go up lower, we'll go up lower. If you want to take projects 1, 3, and 5 and they're out, and move 2 and 4, and put them in, those are all their choice and your choice.
So underline what
But at least to have
Raymond.
a starting point to be able to have a discussion is where I try to get us to.
Yeah, so this is not a done deal. This is just
Yes.
a way of saying, okay, you guys wanted the tax rate to be at a certain level. This is what you've normally done in the past. This is one way to work the puzzle. And that's what the next meeting's going to be about. That's why we're taking home the books. And that's why this presentation is the length it is, because it's preparing us to then come back and say, well, I know you put this project off, but let's switch it or not, and all those things. Go ahead, Ray.
You'll give me the instruction on whatever you want. So going through, the first thing that I took a look at was funding. First thing I took a look at was funding any of the items associated with grants, right? If there's an opportunity to get free money, why not go ahead and try to fund those projects?
Mhm.
However, I will tell you that the TAC grant and the Safe Routes to School grant are both federally funded programs, and the amount of energy and effort that goes into those grants, challenging to say the least. I mean, it's enormous the amount of work that goes behind it. There's kind of a rule of thumb out there that unless you're into the $500,000-$600,000 that you're going to get, it's not worth doing. Because it's just
That was going to be my question, like, when do we weigh how much work and effort to what we get?
I'll tell you, both of these were applied before I got here. Not to say that you'll never see one and never again. The other scenario associated with it, it takes years to go through this process. Years. So you have your standard DOT program, your 2019, your Boulevard Road Section 3, your 2020 Boulevard Road Section 4, and your 21. These are your standard road programs, your standard DOT that we go through. That's the funding associated with it that we need. So we were talking about how to deal with funds. You'll see where I have here funds encumbered. Those are some funds that have already come through the operation budget. And that was based upon the timing of when the project needed to go ahead and to get done. So ideally, you could take a $300,000 project at 20% is your professional cost typically, and fund that entire thing through the capital budget. On this case scenario, on some of these things that were funded, it was partially funded last year and partially funded this year on the engineering component of it. Really the engineering, not hard costs. And that's something that I think we, as we go down, we need to kind of evaluate a little bit more to see how we want to kind of slice out that piece of the pie. Safe Routes to School and the TAP grant, there's a memo in your book included under the tab number. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing. So if you see on the side here, these all have numbers, okay? Those correspond to the numbers of, you have quotes associated with, quotes or a memo associated to the items here. On some of these simple ones, like the DOT that we do every year, you'll see an engineering estimate in there. You're not going to see necessarily a description with that. And that's based upon the ones that I had received.
Raymond, you gotta focus. Sorry.
As long as I'm not out of line. Better? Good?
Yes, thank you.
Not the jokes. All right. So you got
an eye exam. It's like going for an eye exam. Is it better? Of course.
One more aside. This is how I know I'm getting old and I need my eyes checked. I go in here and I stand here and I go, something's wrong with this projector because this looks blurry. I go, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this tomorrow. No one's going to be able to see this presentation. So I bring the two ladies in. Listen, come here, guys. Come, Judy, Katya, come on in, take a look at this. Can you read that? Yeah, line 4 says $3,236.17 and read the whole thing off. I go, when I got home, I told my wife I need to go and get an eye appointment because I can't see it. Safe Routes to School tab we talked about. County open space. This is the 2019 application. We were awarded the funds for that project. Originally shown as KGB. The council has taken a different direction they want to head in and want to get Roosevelt done. And our intent is, as long as we can get the Board of Education on board with us, we're going to utilize those funds to do Roosevelt School. The 2020 project, we just got our notification on that. I sent that to the Recreation Director and the Council Liaison. Talk about what it is that they want to go ahead and do and what ultimately the council wants to do. And we've allocated the funds for that in this budget. And the last piece under the grants comes down to the fire department. The fire department, the chief and the deputy chief have worked with our grant consultant and wrote a grant to try to get about $250,000 worth of air packs. It's a federally funded grant. We're applying for that. And we need to put up a match for that, and that's where that $48,000 comes into play. Okay? If we don't get the grant, we're going to use the $48,000 to purchase 6 new radios. And there's a quote in there as well in your book that shows the cost associated with that. So that's kind of the plan. We're budgeting for the cash to go ahead for the match. If we don't get it, then the match we're going to go ahead and use to get something else that they need. Questions so far?
Just for perspective, those 2 federal grants, I just pulled up the audits, they're from 2015. So they've been, I guess it's, that's just to give you an idea how long it takes.
When should it be done?
It's not cash yet. Those are generally reimbursable grants. So once projects get approved,
So it's approved,
awarded,
it's going to be money to get the money back.
I think that the grant was awarded, but I don't think that it's all the way through the process of approval to get the project underway to actually get reimbursement for it.
So let me add some clarity just for that one, just for those two projects. You can, and the reason I put both of those, in there is because they're not going to necessarily have a big impact this year. They're going to have a big impact next year if they come about. Because we've got to pay to the police, associated with those projects. And if you go back to when we're talking about some of the police problems we're having, these budgets now, these capital budgets have now been, when the estimates are developed, with the hard costs and the soft costs factored in. Because of this, you're not going to be killing the police overtime budget. We shouldn't be killing the police overtime budget anymore. Ergo, there leaves more money in that overtime budget, so we don't have that problem of where we're causing the emergency. So it's a big circle.
So police course theater is what, traffic and safety?
Yes, the overtime rate.
The police officer on scene, making sure it's a safe life. And that's done on an overtime basis.
That's done on a duty rate.
Does it have to be that way?
Yes.
Why?
As opposed to,
Regular police hours.
I'm sorry, Tom, I left judgment to answer that question. You can go ahead and take a line officer and put him on a project. You can do that, and there's no additional cost to the borough. You can do that. However, there would be the argument then that your platoon is now down a guy, or deficient, because I'm now assigning him to overseer.
Okay.
So, it's possible. It's possible, and that's, my rush to the answer on that is typically not done. We try to do it where possible, but as a practice, it's typically not.
Okay.
Okay? This is our, this is a road program. I'm afraid to touch this, because then it's going to go. Your director at the shed, your director of public works, he loves roads like there's no tomorrow.
So do I, Raymond.
If I gave him $3 million tomorrow to have every street paved, you know what? There would be no more cop cars, no more parks. We're canceling day camp, and what we're going to do is go pave more. Okay? And quite frankly, roads are a very part of our infrastructure. It's something that's very visible to our residents. I am a huge proponent in that, doing roads as well too. He has put together a plan that repurposes all of our roads in a 15-year cycle. And while I will tell you, as a comparison, typically it's done in a 20 to 25-year process. 15 is extremely aggressive. And while I like his let's shoot for the stars kind of scenario, that shooting from the stars doesn't, I can't afford it this year, in this year's capital budget. I mean, you could, but you could add in more things, but then you have to take something down. So these are the roads that I have listed here that are part of our co-op project. He has requested, I believe it's 15 or 14 or 15, cut it back 3 or 4 roads. However, I did say that when we deal with the co-op, and if roads did come under bid of the roads that we gave them, and there is some additional funds that are left over, the dollars that we had allocated through the co-op, that if it was feasible and the council wanted to, we would go ahead and pick up another road or two. Okay?
So right now, the proposal is to put 700,000 into roads. That the
Where are you picking that number up?
That was the request.
Bottom of the,
That was the request.
funds needed.
That was the request.
The
703.
request was 700,000. If you look over in the right column, the post capital budget is 439,350.
Okay, so that's the number.
That's the number. which is about $100,000, almost $150,000 increase from last year. But you've got now the police added into that one before you didn't. That's still a significant increase in roads, which makes our mayor and our public works director very happy.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm breaking down into different categories. There was a whole host, as I mentioned, a whole host of requests. I tried to capture everything that was brought to my attention since I've been here. I can't say we remembered everything. I hope we did. But here's what we, looking through the list, is a list of items. Then it got into what the hard costs are, the police costs, the engineering costs, and the proposed cap. You want me to go through each one?
Does it,
Open for discussion to be
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
open for discussion.
so, there's two things we should consider, three things. Time, which is, that we're willing to give today, okay? Our ability to ask questions that are useful, and also, but more importantly, the questions we need to ask for our next meeting. So if we were to prioritize, we should, instead of maybe going through item by item, we should simply try to take a quick look. If we don't understand something, that's the type of question we should ask now, because we're not going to be making any decisions until the next meeting. So maybe we could just take, do you want to look at just this page?
Well, no, when I wrap up, I'll just give the highlights of the next 2 pages, and then we can wrap up if you want.
Okay.
I'll sort of be open for any questions you have. Okay. So the various projects are, you have a road that needs to be, a road and a pipe that needs to be replaced, some additional funding for the community center. You've got some flashers in town that you want to do, and the flashers and the ADA ramps tie together. In this particular project, you have another set of ADA ramps. The chief has asked for some pistol range improvements. At the garage, you have a wiring project that the garage needs to be rewired. And then the chief, as I mentioned in here, there's its phase was allocated there, not necessarily budgeted for, is phase 1 of a 3-part phase of total overhaul of our police communications. We go into vehicles. And again, listed here is the list of vehicles or pieces of equipment. This is what the equipment is and what it replaces. And then over here is what's been allocated. Building and grounds, again, same kind of scenario. This is the departments, where it affects, the description, the dollar amount, and then where I currently allocated it to. Same type of scenario as you go through here. The description, the item, the department, the item, the description, the funds encumbered, and then the total at the bottom.
So Raymond, if we could go back to the page with projects 12 through 26. Starting with DPW, replace a pipe, so everybody knows where we're at. So Raymond, if I'm correct, and just for the education of the residents and the council, 17, 19, and 20 have not been put into this year's budget. So but 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 18 have. So that people understand that the items that were put off are 17, 19, and 20.
12's not in it either.
12's not in it too. I left 12 out. Thank you. My mistake. So, so when you're looking at it between this and the next meeting, these are the ones that were left out. And then on the next page, 23 and 26 were left out, where 21, 22, 24, and 25 aren't in.
Right, so all in the right-hand column where you see funded, those are the items that have been funded. And again, it's back to you guys, whatever you want in, you want out, however you want me to go ahead and do that. That's ultimately your decision.
Now, Raymond, if we go to the next page, items 27 to 41, which is buildings and grounds. Because this page is a little bit more confusing for me, are there any items on this page that are not being funded? I would think so.
Yeah.
Because I see a whole list like 30 through 37. I just want to make sure that I'm correct and that they're not being put either in the capital or in
30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36 are not, 37 is, and that's the rest on the list are.
so 31 through 36 are currently not in.
Correct.
Okay. So is everyone seeing that, so that we're all on the same page? So now, if we go to 42 to 52, what is not in?
42,
'51, I think.
51.
So when we meet next time, these, the ones that are left out and the ones that are in are going to be part of our discussion. And Raymond and the Finance Committee, as well as our department heads, have tried to make a reasonable priority list of the things, as we always do, the things that we must do this year, the things that we should do this year, and the things that we want to do this year. And the things we want to do, of course, are the things that usually get bumped and show up on our documentation, but we usually don't fund. So, but this is our starting point, and maybe it will be our ending point too. But this is where our discussion begins at the next meeting. Is that pretty much how? Okay.
That $99 you talked about for the first opening statement, that's factored all this stuff in. So right now, if we all just wave the wand and say we're good with the $99, we're done.
Well, it's 104 with the Social Security added, right?
Well,
Just a minute, Michelle.
Well, okay, yeah.
Here we go again.
Very generous of you, Ken.
Ken, you're generous. Never leave the town.
If it stops till 11:30 again, I we will.
tax rate, as presented, plus the additional ultimately be combining the number of what was presented today for 99. Where ultimately, you as council take it from, get it all in front of $100 is what's correct.
And just to reiterate, on the budget side specifically, the amount that's built into the budget is operating under the assumption that you want to have a $1.8 million ordinance plus an additional $349,000 of fully funded capital projects. That does not say that they are these projects, right? That happens once you adopt the ordinance. The only thing that you want to keep in mind is if there are roads or something like that that is included in this capital project, you do have timing issues based on the weather that you want to act on them quickly. So as important as it is to have the projects down, for the budget specifically, you want to make sure that you have the dollar amount nailed down. If you know that 1.8 is the number that you want to go with, then you can introduce this budget as is, and then iron out the capital when you're ready to adopt the ordinance. You just have to keep in mind that there are going to be timing issues because you have introduction of the ordinance, and you have a wait period where you're publishing it, and then you have the adoption of the ordinance, then you have a 20-day stop period after that. So it may be 45 days from the day that you introduce it before you can actually adopt it, depending on your meeting dates. So just back into those dates when you're looking at when you want to go out to bid for road projects or anything else to determine when you might want to begin. And that you can also work with the engineer to see how much time they need to prepare the bid specs for all these road projects.
Right, and that's nothing different than what you guys have done.
So for the benefit of the new members of the council, for the budget committee, and for those watching on YouTube, we've been we've always been responsible, but we've added in soft costs, which are important. So we're going to have fewer surprises. We want to thank Raymond and Chris and the Finance Committee for making sure this budget comes with the soft costs, especially the police costs. But also, just so everybody understands, especially those at home, that if we add more to the capital, which will be bonded, then in the long term, we're adding to debt service. But in the immediate, we have to add 5% to the budget because of state law, because New Jersey has very conservative accounting procedures. So if we decide to go above the 1.8 mil for capital, it's not just adding to the capital budget, which would be long-term debt, and that would only go on when we actually went out to bond or did a band. But more importantly, it would go immediately into operational budget, and that has an immediate impact on the tax rate, and also on, and sometimes it can squeeze things out because of our caps, our statutory caps. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, especially those at home, why we're trying to keep to the 1.8 or less, because of its impact on operating, salary, and wages, the yearly budget, not just on the debt services. Raymond, did you want to add anything to that?
And I want to thank you all.
We want to thank you. And Chris.
Process. Again, I only said 5 stars, please, on my daughter's computer, so I can send it off. Then I'll let you color in the stars and you can sign. And again, guys, I stress to you, if you have any questions during the week, if you have any comments, if there's anything that you want to talk to me about, please feel free to come in. Me, personally, I'd rather have, what I understand, this is a record finance committee on time we spend here. And I understand you guys like to have a brief one. If there are, excuse me, if there are topics that you'd like to discuss with me, whether it's capital or operating, come in and call, email, whatever you met. Next week is really, I did an awful lot of talking today. Next week is your time. So there was my notepad. Tell me if there's things you want in, out, however. There are extra bagels left over. Please take them home because I will keep them next week. And again, I thank you.
Good. A couple of things, again, for the benefit of the council, the committee, and people at home. Our next budget committee meeting is scheduled for Saturday, March 7th at 8 a.m. We have 2 more currently scheduled or planned. Wednesday at 6:30, I believe, and then another the following
March 11th.
March 11th. And thank you for and then again Saturday, March 14th at 8 a.m. Now, if at the next meeting we're comfortable with where we're at, Mr. Pirio, I think I'm correct in saying that we wouldn't have those 2 additional meetings. So, for the public at home watching on YouTube as well as for everyone here, these dates are tentative except for March 7th. We are definitely doing March 7th. Okay. Yes, Anthony.
Just briefly, appreciation for your efforts and a thank you to the administration, the staff, mayor, and council from the citizen resident side of the table. I can imagine the efforts put over the past year to modify the whole wow, and bravo to you. And Mayor specifically, as a fellow educator, I appreciate your comments because you want to ensure that all of us here understand the terminology of letters and abbreviations. So just a thank you.
Well, Claudia, do you have any comments before we go?
No, I actually won't be able to be here for the next meeting, so I was just going to see where all of the press that were put in, are they in here somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning of
They're on that spreadsheet, they're all delineated of what the request for, and all the information, you go to 1 is what the cost is.
Okay.
2.
First one to the top. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Claudia, also, Raymond's offer is a genuine offer, but I'm going to add to that my offer. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, contact Raymond, stop by with Raymond. If you need to meet with me, text me and we can know. You have my cell phone number, don't you? You want to write it down?
You're wrong.
I give it out to everyone. It's on my business card. I give it out to all my school parents. It's on every email that if you get an email from me, 201 321 6277. Al, any comments or questions before we close?
No, but I can't be here next week either.
Okay.
I have a grandson that's having a birthday.
So again, if you need to reach out to Raymond or I, feel free to do that. And also, please, if you could, it will be uploaded to YouTube probably late Monday, early Tuesday, so the following Monday or Tuesday, you may want to look at that. Ken, any question or comments?
All set, thanks, sir.
Council, anything that you want to close with at all?
Just thank you for all your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Done a terrific job today.
All right, for those of us who can make it, we'll see you next Saturday, 8 a.m.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
5 stars, Ray, 5 stars.
Second, all in favor?
Slap my cheek.
We are adjourned.
What do you want to do? Put the stars in.
Sign?
I don't have any.
My daughter will be so happy.
Not sure.
No, we only have, I have a
I
civic
think you read it out.
Should
I
I
think
sign and then just?
I think the next one.
We can